I found out my parents called me a freeloader after I paid for their life, so I cut them off. Hey, I'm Alex, and let me tell you, growing up with a golden child sibling is like living in someone else's spotlight all the time. You know the type. There's always that one kid in the family who can do no wrong. For me, that kid was my older brother, Eric. The guy was practically a superhero in my parents' eyes. Star athlete, straight A student, Mr. Popular. You name it, he had it going on. It was always about him. From the time I was little, it was clear who the favorite was. Our house was the place for family get-togethers, and trust me, these weren't small, intimate dinners. Nah, we're talking about big events. Like half the neighborhood showing up, uncles, aunts, cousins, people I barely knew. And somehow these gatherings always turned into Eric appreciation parties. Dad would be flipping burgers on the grill, Mom would be running around making sure everyone had enough food, and there'd be Eric, holding court like a king, with people just hanging on his every word. It's not like I didn't try to fit in, you know? I wanted to be part of it, but somehow it just never worked out. I'd crack a joke and it'd fall flat, or I'd mention something about school, and it was like no one even heard me. I remember one time, this is just a random memory, but it sticks with me. I was about 10, and I got a perfect score on this science test. I was super proud of it. So during one of these family barbecues, I went up to my dad, all excited to show him. But just as I was about to say something, my mom comes running out with this huge cake, and everyone's celebrating Eric winning some soccer tournament. So yeah, my little science test? Totally forgotten. That was basically my life in a nutshell. I wasn't a bad kid or anything. In fact, I did pretty well in school. I wasn't out partying or causing trouble, but you wouldn't know it from how little attention I got. Meanwhile, Eric was the family's pride and joy. He had his own shelf for all his trophies and medals, and Mom even made a scrapbook for him, with every single achievement carefully glued in. I didn't have a scrapbook. I didn't even have a shelf. Hell, I'm pretty sure half my stuff was crammed into a box in the attic somewhere, collecting dust. The thing that really got me, though, wasn't even the lack of attention. It was the way people acted like Eric was some kind of god. Like, no joke, at every single family event, someone would bring him up even if he wasn't there. It's like, oh, did you hear about Eric? He's playing varsity now. Or Eric's got such a bright future ahead of him, I just know he's going to be successful. And I'd be sitting there like, hi? I exist too. The worst part? I started believing it. Like, maybe there really was something wrong with me. Maybe I wasn't worth the attention. I'd sit in my room sometimes just thinking about why I wasn't good enough, even though I was doing everything right. I wasn't failing school. I wasn't getting into trouble. So why wasn't I seen? There was only one person who seemed to get me. Great Aunt Sharon. She wasn't actually all that great in the big important family sense, but to me, she was awesome. Every time there was a family gathering, she'd always take a moment to sit with me. While everyone else was fawning over Eric or caught up in the latest family gossip, she'd pull up a chair and ask me about what I was reading or how school was going. And unlike everyone else, she actually cared about the answer. I remember one time I was hiding in the backyard during one of the big parties. I wasn't feeling it that day and just wanted to escape the noise, so I found a quiet spot behind the garage with a book. Aunt Sharon found me there, sitting cross-legged in the dirt, and instead of dragging me back into the crowd, she sat down beside me. "What are you reading, kiddo?" she asked, her voice calm, like she didn't have anywhere else she'd rather be. I showed her the cover, some fantasy book I'd borrowed from the library. "It's about this kid who finds out he's got these magic powers," I mumbled, half expecting her to lose interest. But she didn't. "Sounds exciting," she said, giving me that warm smile she always had. "You've got a good imagination, Alex. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." That stuck with me. It was the first time in a long while I felt like someone noticed me for who I was, not just Eric's little brother. Aunt Sharon didn't care about soccer trophies or school grades. She just cared about me being me. And honestly, in a family like mine, that meant the world. Still, as much as I loved those quiet moments with Aunt Sharon, they didn't really make up for everything else. Every day felt like a reminder that I wasn't Eric. Like when I started high school, I figured it'd be a fresh start, you know? New teachers, new opportunities. But nope, everyone knew me as Eric's brother. It didn't matter what I did or how well I did it. Every teacher, every coach, every classmate would say the same thing. "Oh, you're Eric's brother. He was such a great student, a great athlete." Even when I made top grades, nobody seemed to care. One time I got an A+ on this massive project in history class. I was pumped. I went home and tried to tell my mom, but she was too busy on the phone with some other soccer mom talking about Eric's latest game. I stood there for a while, waiting for her to hang up, but after like 10 minutes, I just gave up and went to my room. That project got stuffed into my drawer, forgotten like everything else I'd done. The funny thing is, I didn't even want to be Eric. I didn't care about sports or being the most popular guy in school. I just wanted some recognition, you know? Just a little bit of that same pride my parents had for him. But it never came. And the thing is, after a while, you stop expecting it. You start to convince yourself that it's normal, that being overlooked is just how things are supposed to be. That's how I lived my whole childhood, constantly overshadowed, constantly trying to prove I was worth something. It wasn't until years later that I finally realized I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But back then, I was just a kid, waiting for someone to notice I was there. So high school started, and I had this tiny bit of hope that things would be different. You know, new environment, new people, maybe a chance to finally be seen as my own person instead of just Eric's younger brother. But of course, reality hit pretty quick. It wasn't even the first day when people started connecting the dots. Oh, you're Eric's brother, right? He was like amazing on the soccer team. Yeah, your brother was such a good student. You must be just like him. That last comment really got to me because I wasn't like him, not at all. But people just couldn't help making those comparisons. It was like I was walking around in this shadow that was glued to me no matter where I went. Every single teacher, every single coach, they all had this weird expectation that I'd be just like Eric, like I was supposed to carry on his legacy or something. But that wasn't who I was. I wasn't some sports star, and I definitely wasn't the life of the party. I was the kid who sat in the back of the classroom, taking notes and actually paying attention. I worked hard, studied late, and asked questions after class when I didn't get something. It was important to me that I understood things, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I actually cared. And I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I was doing well, better than anyone expected. There was one time, I remember it clearly during my junior year. I was in biology, and we had this massive project that everyone was stressing out over. The teacher, Mrs. Baker, told us it was going to count for like 40% of our grade for the semester. People were freaking out, and I get it. Biology wasn't exactly everyone's favorite subject. But I actually liked it. I dove into that project like my life depended on it, researching everything I could about cell division and how it affects the body. I spent days in the library, poring over books and articles, and I'm pretty sure I was the only one who actually read the assigned chapters. By the time the project was due, I felt pretty confident. Mrs. Baker called me up after class one day, holding my project in her hand, and I'll never forget what she said. She smiled at me, actually smiled, and said, "Alex, this is excellent work. You really went above and beyond." That little moment meant the world to me. It was probably the first time a teacher had acknowledged me like I wasn't just some kid in the background. I felt proud walking home that day. But of course, when I told my parents about it, they barely reacted. I remember coming home and sitting at the kitchen table with my mom. She was on the phone, as usual, chatting with one of her friends about Eric's latest game. I waited for her to hang up, holding my project in my hands like it was a trophy. When she finally put the phone down, I showed her the grade and told her what Mrs. Baker had said. "Oh, that's nice, honey," she said without even looking at it. Then she went right back to talking about how Eric was getting scouted by some college coach. I just sat there staring at the A+ on my project, feeling like I'd been hit with this invisible wall. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, it never seemed to matter to them. It was always Eric this, Eric that. That kind of stuff happened all the time. Like, there was this other time in history class where we had to write a paper on World War II. I spent hours researching and writing, making sure everything was perfect. I was so proud of how it turned out. The teacher, Mr. Davis, even read part of my paper out loud in class because he thought it was one of the best ones. But when I got home and tried to tell my dad, he just shrugged and said something like, "That's cool, but have you seen Eric's new soccer trophy?" It wasn't just my parents, though. It felt like the whole world was fixated on Eric. Whenever we had family dinners or gatherings, all anyone wanted to talk about was how great he was doing. My grandparents would sit there for hours asking him questions about his games, his future plans, and his scholarships. And when the conversation finally died down, it would shift to something else, like the weather or politics. No one ever asked me about school or how I was doing. At some point, I just stopped trying. I mean, why bother? It was clear that nothing I did would ever compare to Eric's accomplishments in their eyes. I'd come home from school, head straight to my room, and bury myself in my homework or a book. It wasn't like I had much of a social life anyway. While Eric was out with his friends, going to parties or playing in games, I was at home, studying and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. The funny thing is, even though I didn't get much attention at home, I was actually thriving at school. I joined a few clubs, made friends with people who shared the same interests as me, and even started getting recognized by my teachers as one of the top students in my grade. I wasn't some social butterfly, but I found my group, the kids who like to stay after class and talk about books, science, and movies. It was nice to have people who didn't expect me to be anyone other than myself. But even with all that, there was still this lingering feeling that I wasn't good enough. Like, no matter what I achieved, it would never be enough to get the recognition I wanted from my parents. I mean, it's not like I was craving the spotlight or anything, but a little acknowledgement would have been nice. Just once, I wanted to hear them say they were proud of me for something I'd done, not because I was Eric's sibling, but because I was me. I guess the turning point came during senior year, when I was applying to colleges. I'd worked my butt off for years, getting good grades, participating in clubs, and trying to build a solid application. I applied to a few schools, and one day I got the letter: acceptance into a business program at State University. I was thrilled. I ran home, excited to tell my parents the good news, but when I walked in the door and announced that I'd been accepted, their reaction was underwhelming, to say the least. "Oh, that's nice, Alex," my mom said, barely looking up from her magazine. "Cool," my dad muttered, scrolling through his phone. "What about Eric? Did he get in anywhere?" That was it. That was the moment I realized that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, they were never going to see me the way I wanted them to. I wasn't Eric, and that meant I didn't matter as much in their eyes. It hurt, but it also lit a fire in me. If they weren't going to believe in me, I was going to prove them wrong, one way or another. So, after that whole thing with getting into State University, I pretty much accepted that my parents weren't ever going to care about my accomplishments the way they did with Eric. I tried not to dwell on it too much, but it still stung. I mean, it's hard not to feel it when you're working your butt off and the people who are supposed to care the most barely even notice. Anyway, I'd been accepted into the business program, which was a big deal for me. I was pumped, but the reality of paying for it was creeping up fast. With no help from my parents, I was basically on my own. I'd been applying for scholarships, grants, and anything else that could help cover the costs, but it wasn't enough. That's when Aunt Sharon stepped in. I wasn't expecting it at all. One afternoon, I was hanging out at her place, helping her with some stuff around the house. Aunt Sharon lived in this cozy little house that always smelled like fresh bread or cookies, way better than the chaos at my parents' house. We were sitting in her kitchen, and out of nowhere, she asked me how things were going with college. I tried to shrug it off, like I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. "Yeah, I got accepted, but I'm not sure how I'm going to pay for it. It's kind of up in the air right now." Aunt Sharon put down the dish she was washing and turned to look at me. "Alex, I know your parents haven't been much help, but you're smart, and you've worked hard to get where you are. You shouldn't have to give up on your dreams because of money." I didn't say anything at first. I mean, what could I say? She wasn't wrong, but I had already resigned myself to the fact that I might have to delay college or work full-time just to save up. It was just one of those things I thought I'd have to deal with. Then Aunt Sharon said something that completely floored me. "I've got some savings," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I've been putting money away for years, and I'd like to give it to you for your tuition." I just stared at her for a minute, my brain trying to catch up with what she was saying. "Wait, what? You want to help me pay for school?" I couldn't believe it. No one had ever offered to help me like that before. She smiled and nodded. "I don't have any kids of my own, and I've always seen you as my own. You've got so much potential, Alex. You deserve to go to college and make something of yourself. And I'm not going to let money be the thing that stops you." I swear I almost started crying right there in her kitchen. It was like all the weight I'd been carrying around, the pressure of figuring everything out on my own, just lifted. I didn't even know how to thank her. I just hugged her tight and tried not to lose it. Aunt Sharon's offer changed everything. Suddenly, college wasn't just a distant dream, it was happening. I spent the next few weeks getting everything in order, applying for student housing, signing up for classes, and preparing for this huge new chapter in my life. And the whole time, Aunt Sharon was there, supporting me in ways I didn't even know I needed. But of course, my parents had no idea about any of this. I hadn't told them about Aunt Sharon's offer because, honestly, I didn't think they'd care. They were too busy with Eric's latest achievements to even ask me about my plans. It wasn't until one evening, a couple of weeks before I was set to leave for college, that they finally brought it up. We were sitting around the dinner table, me, my parents, and Eric. The usual chatter about his soccer games and college applications was in full swing when my mom suddenly turned to me. "So, Alex, what are you planning to do after graduation?" she asked, like it was the first time she'd thought about it. I almost laughed. "I'm going to college," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "I got accepted into the business program at State University." For a split second, the room went quiet. My dad put down his fork and raised an eyebrow. And how exactly are you planning on paying for that? This was it. The moment I'd been dreading. I took a deep breath. Aunt Sharon is helping me. She's giving me her savings for my tuition. My parents' reactions were exactly what I expected. My mom's eyes went wide with shock, and my dad's face twisted into this weird combination of surprise and anger. Sharon's giving you money? My dad said, his voice sharp. That's ridiculous. If she has money to spare, it should go to Eric. He needs a new car for college. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They didn't even care that I was finally getting my shot at something. They were more concerned about Eric needing a car. I felt this wave of frustration rise up in me, but I tried to stay calm. This isn't about Eric, I said, my voice tight. Aunt Sharon wants to help me. She offered, and I'm not turning it down. Mom, of course, tried to guilt trip me. But your brother needs that money, Alex. You know how important his future is. I couldn't take it anymore. I'm important too, I snapped, louder than I intended. This is my future we're talking about. I've worked hard for this, and Aunt Sharon believes in me. Why can't you guys? The silence that followed was deafening. My parents just stared at me, completely caught off guard by my outburst. Eric, for once, didn't say anything. He just sat there, looking uncomfortable. I didn't care, though. I'd had enough of being ignored, enough of being the second thought. I'm going to college, I repeated, quieter this time, but just as firm. With or without your support. I pushed my chair back and left the table. I didn't need their approval anymore. For the first time in my life, I had someone in my corner who believed in me, Aunt Sharon. And that was enough. The next few weeks were a blur. I packed up my things, said goodbye to the few friends I had in town, and got ready for the big move. I still hadn't told my parents much about my plans, and honestly, I didn't feel like I owed them any explanations. This was my time to finally step out of Eric's shadow and make something of myself. When the day came to leave, Aunt Sharon drove me to campus. As we pulled up to the dorms, I felt this overwhelming mix of nerves and excitement. It was the start of something completely new, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take me. As I hugged Aunt Sharon goodbye, I couldn't help but feel grateful. She'd given me the chance I needed, and I wasn't going to waste it. Starting college felt like stepping into a whole new world. I'd never really been away from home for that long, and now I was suddenly surrounded by people my age, all living on their own for the first time. It was exciting, but at the same time, a little overwhelming. When Aunt Sharon dropped me off, I remember standing outside my dorm building, looking at the huge campus in front of me, feeling like I'd finally made it. The first week was a blur of orientations, meeting new people, and trying to get the hang of things. I wasn't exactly the most outgoing person, so I was a bit nervous about making friends. But surprisingly, it wasn't as hard as I thought. Everyone was in the same boat, new place, new faces, so it was easy to strike up conversations in the dining hall or between classes. My roommate Jake was one of those super chill guys who somehow managed to be friends with everyone. He had this laid-back vibe and always seemed to know what was going on around campus. I didn't know it at the time, but having him as a roommate would end up being one of the best things that happened to me during those early days. He was the type of person who would introduce me to everyone, and before I knew it, I had a solid group of friends. But as much as the social part of college was important, I was still there to get a degree. I was determined not to let anything distract me from that. I didn't come all this way just to slack off. The first day of classes, I showed up early, sat in the front row, and took notes like my life depended on it. The professors were intimidating at first, way different from high school teachers, but they seemed to appreciate the effort I was putting in. There was one professor, Dr. Collins, who taught my intro to business class. He was this older guy with a thick beard and a voice that could command an entire lecture hall without a microphone. I remember the first time I raised my hand to ask a question, my heart was pounding. But instead of brushing me off or giving a short answer, Dr. Collins smiled and said, "Good question, Alex," and then went on to explain it in detail. That one small moment was a big deal to me. It felt like validation, like I wasn't just another face in the crowd. That class quickly became my favorite. It wasn't just the subject. Business was what I came here to study. But it was the way Dr. Collins made everything click. He had this way of turning what seemed like complicated concepts into something I could actually wrap my head around. I'd go back to my dorm every day and reread my notes, making sure I understood everything. Jake thought I was a little too intense about it sometimes, but honestly, I didn't care. This was my shot, and I wasn't going to waste it. Speaking of Jake, I have to give the guy credit. He was one of those people who could breeze through classes without really trying, but he never made me feel bad for taking things seriously. He'd joke around about how I was teacher's pet, but it was all in good fun. And when he saw me stressing out about an assignment or a test, he'd actually sit down with me and help me relax a bit. "Dude, it's college," he'd say, tossing a ball of crumpled up paper at me from across the room. "You're supposed to have fun. Don't burn yourself out before midterms." He had a point, but I couldn't help it. There was a lot riding on this for me. This wasn't just about getting a degree. It was about proving to myself that I was more than just the forgotten sibling. Every time I sat down to study or work on a project, it felt like I was pushing back against all the years of being overlooked. I wasn't doing it for my parents or even for Aunt Sharon. I was doing it for me. Still, I did try to loosen up a bit. Jake dragged me out to a few campus events. Nothing too crazy, just stuff like movie nights or hanging out with some people from the dorm. I'll admit, it was nice to step away from the books for a bit and actually enjoy being at college. I started feeling like I belonged there, like I was part of something bigger than just my little world of lectures and textbooks. One of the biggest surprises, though, came from a class project. Dr. Collins had assigned us a group project where we had to come up with a business idea and present it to the class. Group projects weren't really my thing. I'd always been the kid who ended up doing all the work while everyone else slacked off. But this time it was different. My group was made up of 3 other students, Jess, Tyler, and Marcus. Jess was super organized, Tyler was this tech genius, and Marcus had a way with words that made him perfect for presentations. For once, I wasn't the only one pulling my weight. We worked really well together, bouncing ideas off each other and actually listening to each other's input. By the time we presented our idea, a campus delivery service for late-night snacks, we were all feeling pretty confident. The day of the presentation, I was nervous as hell. Public speaking wasn't my strong suit, but I'd practiced my part over and over until I could recite it in my sleep. When we got up there, though, everything clicked. Jess nailed the intro, Tyler's tech demo worked perfectly, and Marcus wrapped it all up with this killer closing statement. I did my part without stumbling, and when we finished, the class actually clapped. Dr. Collins gave us a nod of approval, and I swear, it felt like winning the lottery. That project ended up being a turning point for me. Not only did we get an A, but it also made me realize that I was capable of more than I thought. I wasn't just the quiet kid in the background anymore. I was part of a team, and I'd contributed something meaningful. It was a huge confidence boost, and it pushed me to keep going, to keep pushing myself out of my comfort zone. By the end of that first semester, I felt like I was finally hitting my stride. I wasn't just surviving college, I was thriving. Sure, there were still moments where I doubted myself, and yeah, I missed Aunt Sharon and the comfort of her house sometimes, but I was building something here, something that was mine. I guess what I'm trying to say is, college was more than just classes and grades for me. It was the first time I felt like I had control over my life, like I was the one deciding who I was going to be. And even though there were still challenges ahead, I knew I could handle it. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. So, after college, I did what any recent graduate does. I found a job. It wasn't anything flashy, but it was steady, and I was grateful for it. It gave me the chance to save up and figure out what I wanted to do next. I knew from the start that working for someone else wasn't going to cut it for me long term. I had bigger plans. That's when the idea of opening my own restaurant started brewing in my head. I've always loved cooking, and the idea of running my own place just felt right. I kept thinking about what it would be like to have my own spot, where people would come in for good food and a welcoming atmosphere. After a couple of years of working and saving, I finally took the leap. I opened my first restaurant in a small but busy part of town. It wasn't anything fancy at first, just a cozy little place with a simple menu. But people started coming, and before I knew it, the business was taking off. Running a restaurant isn't easy, though. Those first few months were insane. I barely had time to breathe between managing the kitchen, serving customers, and handling all the behind-the-scenes stuff. But despite the long hours and stress, I loved it. It felt like I was finally doing something that was mine, something I built from the ground up. And when it started getting popular, that was just the icing on the cake. As the restaurant grew, I took the next big step, opening another branch. It felt like a dream. I never imagined I'd have more than one place, but there I was, expanding the business and watching it thrive. Eventually, I had a few locations around town, and things were going better than I could have hoped for. I had a solid team of employees, and the restaurants were making a good profit. Life was pretty good. And then, as if on cue, my parents came back into the picture. It started with a phone call from my mom. I hadn't heard much from her or my dad in a while, not since I'd gone off to college. We'd been keeping our distance, which honestly was fine by me. But suddenly there they were, back again, asking for a favor. Alex, sweetie, how are you doing? It's been so long, Mom said, her voice all sweet and full of fake enthusiasm. I could tell something was up immediately. I'm fine, Mom. Busy with the restaurants, I replied, keeping it short. I knew there was more to this call than just a friendly check-in. Well, we're so proud of you. You know that, right? She said, her voice edging toward what I could only describe as desperation. But, um, we were wondering if you could do us a little favor? It's about Eric. Of course, it was about Eric. It's always about Eric. I let her continue, even though I already had a good idea of where this was going. You know, he's been struggling to find work lately. He's applied everywhere, but no one's hiring him, she explained. He's had some issues at his last few jobs, and now it's like no one will give him a chance. We were hoping maybe you could help him out. Give him a job at one of your restaurants? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Eric, the golden child who could do no wrong, had apparently messed up so many times that even his charm couldn't land him a job anymore. Part of me wanted to say no, to remind them of all the times they put Eric on a pedestal while ignoring everything I did, but I knew that wasn't going to help anyone. So against my better judgment, I agreed. Fine, Mom. I can give him a job, I said, my voice a little more tired than I wanted it to be. But he's going to have to work as a waiter. No special treatment. He needs to actually do the job. Oh, thank you, Alex. You don't know how much this means to us, she gushed, like I'd just saved the world. He'll be so grateful. Grateful? Eric? Yeah, right. When Eric showed up to start work, it was awkward, to say the least. He acted like he was doing me a favor by being there. Like I should be grateful for him gracing my restaurant with his presence. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, giving him a job when no one else would hire him, and he acted like he was above it. But I kept my cool and treated him like any other employee. Surprisingly, he didn't do a terrible job. He wasn't great either, but he showed up, did what was required, and didn't cause too many issues. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than I expected. Things stayed pretty calm for a while after that, but then my parents called again. This time the favor was even bigger. Alex, we need to talk, my dad said, sounding more serious than usual. We're in some financial trouble and we need your help. Of course they were. Apparently they had blown through all their savings. Between Eric's endless adventures, his failed business ideas, the college he never finished, and whatever other nonsense he got into, they had nothing left. They'd spent it all, and now they were looking to me to bail them out. At this point, I should have been used to it. I should have known that they'd come to me eventually, especially after years of pouring everything into Eric. But it still hurt. It still felt like they were only coming to me because they had no other option, not because they actually valued me or cared about what I'd achieved. I could have said no. I could have told them to figure it out on their own, that I wasn't their safety net. But for some reason, I didn't. Maybe part of me still wanted to help, even after everything. Or maybe I just didn't want to see them completely fall apart. So, once again, I agreed. I started sending them a monthly allowance, just enough to help them get by. I wasn't going to cover all of their expenses, but I didn't want them to lose their home, or be out on the street either. It felt like the right thing to do, even though it left a bitter taste in my mouth. And of course, there was Eric still working at the restaurant, still getting by without any real consequences for the messes he'd made. My parents didn't ask him to contribute or to help them out. They just let him keep doing his thing, while I was the one stepping up, as always. In the end, I couldn't help but wonder how things had turned out this way. I'd built something real, something successful, and yet here I was, still cleaning up after the golden child, still giving my parents the help they needed because they'd blown everything on him. But for now, it was what it was. At least I had my restaurants, my business. I'd created something that was mine, and no one could take that away from me. One afternoon, I was at the restaurant going over some invoices and prepping for the upcoming week. It was a normal day, busy, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then my phone rang. It was Aunt Sharon. Now, Aunt Sharon doesn't call me much unless there's something important, so right away I knew something was up. Hey, Aunt Sharon, I said, trying to keep my voice light, even though I was already bracing myself for whatever news she had. Alex, sweetie, you need to see this video, she said, her voice serious. It's from a family party your parents were at last weekend. Someone posted it online and, well, I think you should take a look. My stomach dropped. A video? Of my parents? It didn't sound good. What's it about? I asked, trying to get a sense of what I was walking into. Just watch it. I'm sending you the link right now. Call me after, she said, sounding almost hesitant, like she wasn't sure how I'd react. I opened the link Aunt Sharon sent, and the first thing I saw was my parents, clearly drunk, holding drinks and swaying slightly as they stood in front of a group of people. There was loud music in the background, and the camera was shaky, but I could hear every word they were saying. My mom started talking first. You know, everyone thinks Alex built those restaurants on their own, but really it was all Eric, she slurred, waving her hand dramatically. Eric's the real genius behind it all. He's the one who gave Alex that nice job. He works so hard, running around all day making sure everything's perfect while Alex just sits back and manages things. I blinked, not sure if I'd heard that right. Did she really just say Eric was the one who gave me a job? Eric, who couldn't hold down a job anywhere else, was supposedly the mastermind behind my restaurant business? I was so stunned I almost paused the video, but then my dad chimed in. And you know what else? My dad said, his face flushed and his words slurred. We gave Alex money to start those restaurants. We helped them get off the ground. But does Alex ever thank us? No, ungrateful little freeloader. He practically spat the last word, his face twisting in disgust. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were my parents, my own parents, standing there at a family party, drunk out of their minds, telling everyone that I was a freeloader, that I'd only made it because of Eric and their supposed financial help. I felt my blood boiling. The restaurant was mine. I'd built it from scratch. Me, not Eric, not them. They hadn't given me a dime. And now they were standing there, rewriting history like I was some useless leech riding on their coattails. As the video continued, my mom rambled on about how Eric was so humble and didn't take credit for everything he did for me. He could have opened his own business, you know, she said with a slurred giggle. But he's too kind. He just wants to help Alex succeed. That's the kind of brother he is. I felt sick. Eric, who could barely manage to be a waiter, was now apparently the brains behind my entire business, and they were acting like he was some kind of saint for letting me run the restaurants while he quietly did all the real work. It was beyond absurd. It was insulting. It was a flat-out lie. By the time the video ended, my hands were shaking with anger. I couldn't believe they'd do this, talking behind my back, making me look like a joke in front of the whole family, and they didn't even think twice about it, like it was just some casual conversation, like it wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal. I'd worked my entire life to get to where I was. I'd busted my ass to make something of myself, while Eric had screwed up every opportunity he'd ever had. And now, after everything, they were giving him the credit and calling me the freeloader? I couldn't let this slide. I grabbed my phone and called my parents, my heart pounding as the phone rang. My mom answered, sounding cheerful, like nothing was wrong. Alex, how are you, sweetie? I didn't bother with small talk. I saw the video, I said, my voice cold and shaking with barely contained anger. There was a pause on the other end, and I could practically hear her scrambling to come up with a response. What video? She asked, her voice suddenly wary. The one from the party, I snapped. The one where you and Dad are telling everyone that I'm a freeloader and that Eric is the real reason I've been successful. Oh, that, she said, trying to laugh it off. Alex, you know we were just joking. It was all in good fun. We'd had a few drinks and... You called me a freeloader, I cut her off, my voice rising. You said Eric was the one who gave me a job, that you gave me money to start the restaurants. Do you realize how insulting that is? I built this business on my own without any help from you or Eric, and you're standing there telling people it's all because of him? She started to stammer, but I didn't give her a chance to continue. I've had enough, I said, my voice hard. I'm done with this. I'm done with the lies, the manipulation, all of it. Don't call me. Don't ask me for anything. You're cut off, for good. Alex, wait, we didn't mean... She tried to say, but I hung up before she could finish. I sat there for a minute, my phone still in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. I'd always known my relationship with my parents was messed up, but this? This was the final straw. They had crossed a line that I couldn't forgive. Aunt Sharon called me later that day to check in. I'm so sorry you had to see that, Alex, she said, her voice full of sympathy. I don't know what they were thinking. They weren't, I replied, feeling drained. But it doesn't matter anymore. I'm done with them. After I hung up with Aunt Sharon, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't weighed down by the constant pressure to make my parents happy, to live up to their impossible expectations, or to clean up their messes. I was free. I'd made my own success, and I didn't owe them a thing. Mom said, Tyler and Kayla are moving into your house next month. I replied, too late. I'm moving 300 miles away tomorrow. They showed up to sold signs and empty rooms. Sup Reddit. My family tried to hand over my house to my golden child brother and his pregnant wife, without even asking me. So I sold it out from under them and moved to Chicago. What followed was a complete family meltdown that I'm still savoring months later. This is long and messy, so grab some snacks. I'm Brianna, 29 female, and I've spent my entire life being the backup option nobody actually cared about. My older brother Tyler, 32 male, has always been the shining star while I was just kind of there. The reliable one they could depend on but never really valued. The afterthought. The safety net. The one who'd always be fine no matter what happened. But one Thursday evening in October, I finally stopped being anyone's afterthought. And honestly, it felt incredible. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't when I overheard my parents telling Gramps that Tyler should get the bulk of the inheritance because he needed financial stability while I'd always managed somehow. Like my ability to handle life was somehow a character flaw that meant I deserved less support. It wasn't when they skipped my college graduation ceremony, something I'd worked 4 years toward, to drive 2 states over and watch Tyler's amateur softball tournament. A tournament his team lost in the first round, by the way. They didn't even apologize. Just said Tyler really needed their support that day, and I'd understand when I was older. I was 22. It wasn't even when they took $5,000 from me, money I'd saved for months by working overtime and skipping meals, to bail out Tyler and his wife Kayla after their third financial disaster in just 2 years. That $5,000 was supposed to be my emergency fund, the buffer that let me sleep at night knowing I could handle unexpected expenses. Gone in an afternoon because Tyler made terrible decisions and my parents expected me to fix it. Nope. What really broke me was how casually they made life-altering decisions about my future without bothering to consult me. Like I was just a resource they could deploy however they wanted. Like my thoughts, feelings, and plans were completely irrelevant to their calculations. Growing up in Tyler's shadow wasn't just my normal. It was my entire childhood identity. I remember being 8 when Tyler got a brand new PlayStation for his birthday. Top-of-the-line system, 3 controllers, dozens of games. When my birthday came 3 months later, I inherited his old handheld device with sticky buttons and a flickering screen. Mom acted like she was doing me a favor. When Tyler joined the middle school basketball team, my parents immediately rearranged their entire work schedules to attend every single game, every Tuesday and Thursday evening, plus weekend tournaments. Dad would leave work early. Mom would swap shifts. They'd sit in the bleachers cheering while Tyler mostly sat on the bench. He wasn't even a starter, just a mediocre player who occasionally got subbed in during the fourth quarter when the outcome was already decided. But they never missed a game. Not once. Meanwhile, I was pulling straight A's, making the honor roll 4 years in a row, and competing in state-level debate tournaments. My certificates went on the fridge for maybe 3 days before Mom would replace them with Tyler's latest barely passing grade. Like a C- in English deserved more celebration than my academic achievement. Tyler needs extra encouragement. Mom would explain whenever I asked why they couldn't make my debate competitions. You're so independent, Brianna. You've always been our little adult. You don't need us there the same way he does. Little adult. I heard that phrase so many times growing up it might as well have been my middle name. Little adult was just code for, we don't need to pay attention to you because you're not causing us problems. The favoritism got worse as we got older. Tyler dropped out of college after 3 semesters, fully funded by my parents. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs to cover my own tuition, 1 scholarships, and graduated with a 3.7 GPA. My reward? A text saying congrats and a $50 Target gift card. No party, no celebration dinner, nothing. Tyler's high school graduation party, not even college, had been a massive backyard barbecue with 75 people, catered food, and a custom cake, for a 2.3 GPA. The unfairness burned, but I kept pushing forward. Figured if I just proved myself enough, worked hard enough, achieved enough, they'd eventually see me. Eventually recognize that I was worth their attention too. I was wrong. By age 27, I'd saved enough to buy a modest 3-bedroom house. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every piece of furniture, I handled it alone. I still remember signing the closing papers, handshaking as I wrote my name. The realtor congratulated me on buying property solo at my age. I drove to my new house, walked through the empty rooms, and cried. Happy tears. Proud tears. I'd actually done it. Tyler and Kayla, meanwhile, kept floundering from one disaster to another. Tyler treated employment like a seasonal hobby, enthusiastic for the first few weeks, then increasingly flaky until he either quit or got fired. He'd had 7 jobs in 5 years. Retail, warehouse work, delivery driving, call center customer service. Never lasted more than 4 months anywhere. His pattern was always the same. Start with big plans and declarations about how this job was different. how he was really going to apply himself this time. Within a month, he'd be complaining about his boss being unreasonable or his coworkers being dramatic. By month 3, he'd start calling in sick frequently. By month 4, he'd be unemployed again with some story about how the job wasn't a good fit culturally. Kayla wasn't helping matters. She had this compulsive spending problem that made their financial situation exponentially worse. Designer purses she couldn't afford, restaurant meals 3 times a week, a leased BMW that cost more monthly than most people's rent. She'd blow through paychecks before they cleared, then act surprised when the account was overdrawn. Together, they were a financial disaster in constant motion. The cryptocurrency incident was peak Tyler brilliance. He'd gotten obsessed with digital currency after watching some YouTube videos from influencers who drove rented Lamborghinis and talked about generational wealth. Tyler became convinced he'd discovered the secret to getting rich quick. He borrowed $10,000 from our parents, who really couldn't afford to loan that kind of money, and dumped it all into some obscure coin that was supposedly about to explode. Had this whole spreadsheet showing how his investment would 10 times within 6 months. The coin crashed within 3 weeks, lost 90% of its value overnight when the creators did a rug pull, and disappeared with everyone's money. Tyler's $10,000 became about $800 in basically worthless digital tokens. Did he learn anything from this? Absolutely not. My parents kept bailing him out. Every few months there'd be a new crisis. Rent was overdue. The car was about to be repossessed. Credit cards were maxed out. Utilities were getting shut off. And my parents, despite being firmly middle class with limited retirement savings, would somehow come up with the money. When their own funds dried up from constantly rescuing Tyler, guess who they turned to? Just a small loan, Dad would say, calling me at work. His voice would have this careful, measured tone like he was trying to de-escalate a hostage situation. Tyler's in a really tough spot right now. He's got this job interview lined up, but they need to get through this month first. Those small loans added up terrifyingly fast. $500 here when their rent was short. $1,200 when Kayla's car needed emergency repairs. $800 when Tyler's phone got shut off and he needed it for job applications. $3,000 when they were about to be evicted and had nowhere else to turn. Over 5 years, I handed my brother $15,000. 15 grand that I'd earned through actual work, that I'd saved by making sacrifices, that was supposed to be building my future, gone to subsidize Tyler's inability to adult. I knew that money was never coming back. Kept meticulous records anyway, a spreadsheet with every loan amount, date, and their promise to pay me back as soon as things stabilized. Things never stabilized. Tyler never paid back a penny. My extended family started noticing the dynamic at gatherings. Family barbecues became uncomfortable social experiments where people would make passive-aggressive comments about my generosity. My Aunt Beverly would sip her iced tea and say things like, "So wonderful of you to support your brother's journey." Not everyone would be so giving. The way she emphasized giving made it clear she knew I was being taken advantage of. My Uncle Rich was less subtle. At Thanksgiving, he'd make loud comments within Tyler's earshot. "Must be nice having a rich sister who bails you out every time you screw up. Some of us had to figure life out on our own without a safety net." Tyler would just smirk and shrug, completely unbothered by the criticism. Why would he care? As long as the money kept flowing, he had no reason to change. Despite knowing I was being used, I kept showing up to family events. Sundays, holidays, random weeknight dinners when Mom would call saying, "It's been forever since we've seen you," even though I'd been there the previous week. I'd arrive exhausted after grinding through a 10-hour shift, still in my business clothes because I didn't have time to change, only to find Tyler and Kayla already there. They'd be sprawled on the living room furniture, feet propped on the coffee table Mom always told me not to put my feet on, eating leftover takeout that I'd brought to a previous dinner. Tyler would barely acknowledge my arrival, maybe a half wave without looking away from whatever was on TV. Kayla would glance up from her phone long enough to ask if I could watch their dog next weekend because they had plans. Not, "Hello," not, "How are you?" Just an immediate request for a favor. And I'd usually say yes because that's what I did. The reliable one. The one who helped without complaining. Then came the dinner that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening in October. Unseasonably warm for that time of year. I'd just wrapped a massive project at work. 3 months of analyzing compliance protocols for a merger that finally got approved. My team had celebrated with cake in the conference room that afternoon, and my boss had hinted at a promotion in the works. I should have been exhausted and happy, ready to go home and celebrate with a bubble bath and trashy reality TV. Instead, I'd gotten a text from Mom that morning. "Family dinner tonight, 6:30. Don't be late. The exclamation points should have warned me something was up. Mom only used excessive punctuation when she wanted something. I pulled up to my parents' house around 6:20, parking behind Tyler's beat-up sedan and Kayla's leased BMW. That silver M3 she absolutely couldn't afford, but drove anyway because image mattered more than financial stability in her world. The monthly payment on that car was probably $1,400, which was insane considering Tyler's employment history. The smell of Mom's homemade lasagna hit me the second I opened the front door. My favorite. My absolute favorite dish. Mom only made lasagna for special occasions, or when she wanted something, which meant tonight fell into the latter category. I should have turned around right then. Should have faked a sudden migraine or work emergency. But I didn't because, despite everything, some stupid part of me still hoped for normal family dinners. "Brianna," Mom called from the kitchen, her voice unnaturally cheerful. "Perfect timing. We're just about ready to eat." Tyler and Kayla were already positioned in the living room, like they owned the place. Tyler had claimed Dad's recliner, the good one with the massage function that Dad never let anyone else use. Kayla sat on the couch with her feet tucked under her, scrolling through her phone and occasionally showing Tyler something that would make him laugh. Neither of them greeted me when I walked in. Tyler gave me a brief head nod. Kayla didn't even look up. The dining room table was set for 4 with Mom's good dishes, the ones she usually reserved for Christmas and Easter. Cloth napkins, wine glasses, even though I was the only one who drank wine and I'd driven there. The fancy serving platters she'd gotten as wedding gifts 30 years ago. Red flags everywhere. I was walking into an ambush and didn't realize it yet. Dinner started normally enough. Dad asked about work. I gave him the abbreviated version of my project success, watching his eyes glaze over as I explained compliance protocols. He'd always been more interested in Tyler's stories, which tended to be dramatic and entertaining rather than professionally technical. Tyler dominated the conversation as usual. Spent 20 minutes explaining his latest money-making scheme. Flipping houses. Apparently binge-watching several renovation shows on HGTV and YouTube had transformed him into a real estate investment expert overnight. "The key is finding undervalued properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods," he said, gesturing with his fork for emphasis. He was using phrases he'd clearly memorized from some podcast without really understanding what they meant. You buy low, do some cosmetic updates, then sell high when the market appreciates. It's basically free money if you know what you're doing. Tyler had no construction skills, no real estate license, no capital, and no track record of successfully completing any project ever. But sure, house flipping was definitely his calling. Kayla jumped in with breathless enthusiasm. "We've been looking at properties online. There's this adorable little bungalow that just needs some paint and new countertops. It could be worth $300,000 after renovations." The property in question was probably listed for $250, needed a complete gut renovation, and they had exactly $0 for a down payment. But details. My parents nodded along enthusiastically, like Tyler was presenting a legitimate business plan instead of a pipe dream based on reality TV. I pushed pasta around my plate, said, "That's interesting," at appropriate intervals, and counted down the minutes until I could leave. That's when Mom cleared her throat deliberately. That fake little cough she does when she's about to say something she knows will be controversial. "So," she began, glancing at Dad for backup, "we've been having some family discussions about Tyler and Kayla's situation. Here we go." I braced myself for another loan request. In my head, I was already calculating my current savings balance and how much I could spare without dipping into my emergency fund or down payment savings for a potential future property. "They've been having a really tough time since their rent went up," Mom continued, her voice taking on that syrupy, sympathetic tone. "And with a baby on the way—" "Wait, what?" I interrupted, completely blindsided. "Baby?" Kayla was pregnant? This was significant news that nobody had bothered to mention to me, despite the fact that I'd been to 3 family dinners in the past month. "Oh!" Mom's hand flew to her mouth in this theatrical gesture of surprise. "We thought you knew. Kayla's 11 weeks along. Due in late April." I looked at Kayla, who was smiling with this smug, self-satisfied expression. Like getting pregnant while unemployed, broke, and unstable was some kind of achievement, deserving congratulations. "Congratulations," I managed, my brain still trying to process this bombshell. Tyler was about to be a father. Tyler, who couldn't keep a job for 4 months or manage his own finances, was going to be responsible for another human being. "So anyway," Mom continued, clearly eager to move past my reaction, "we found the perfect solution to help them out. They're going to move into your house next month. We figured you could take the spare bedroom there, or stay with us temporarily, or maybe find a small apartment since you don't really need all that space living alone." Time stopped. My stomach dropped like I was free falling off a building. I stared at her, waiting for someone to burst out laughing and admit this was an elaborate joke. Maybe a hidden camera prank. Surely this wasn't really happening. Nobody laughed. My house? I finally got out, my voice weird and strangled. It just makes perfect sense, Dad jumped in immediately, using his reasonable problem solver voice. Like this was simple math instead of completely insane. You've got 3 bedrooms and you're living there alone. That's a lot of house for one person. Tyler and Kayla need room for the baby, and that front bedroom with the big window would be perfect for a nursery. My front bedroom, with my big bay window, in my house, the house I'd bought myself, the only thing I'd ever owned that was truly mine. We could paint it pale yellow, Kayla added, looking up from her phone finally. Gender neutral for now until we find out what we're having. And we'll need to baby-proof everything, obviously. Maybe put up one of those fancy baby gates at the stairs. She was talking about modifications to my house like it was already settled. Like they'd already measured the rooms and picked out furniture. Like my opinion was just a formality they were bothering to go through. This way you won't have to worry about maintaining such a large space by yourself, Mom said, patting my hand like she was doing me a huge favor. It's really what's best for everyone. Family takes care of family. They weren't asking me. They were informing me. This wasn't a discussion or a request for help. This was an announcement that they'd already made decisions about my life and my property without including me in the conversation. I looked around the table. Dad was nodding supportively. Mom looked pleased with herself for solving everyone's problems. Tyler had this little smirk playing at his lips, like he'd won something. Kayla was back on her phone, probably browsing baby furniture. Something inside me cracked. Not a dramatic explosion, more like ice breaking up on a frozen lake. A shift so fundamental I could feel it in my bones. For 29 years, I'd been the reliable one, the helper, the problem solver, the one who sacrificed for Tyler. I'd swallowed disappointment every time they chose him. I'd smiled through celebrations of his mediocrity while my achievements went ignored. I'd loaned money I couldn't afford to lose because family helps family. And this was my reward. They wanted my house. The one thing I'd built completely on my own, through my own work and sacrifice. And they expected me to hand it over without protest, because that's what I always did. I forced myself to smile. You know what? That sounds reasonable. The table relaxed instantly like they'd been holding their breath. Mom's shoulders dropped. Dad gave an approving nod. Tyler and Kayla exchanged satisfied looks. We figured they could move in early next month, Tyler said casually, like we were discussing borrowing a book instead of taking over my entire house. That gives you roughly 3 weeks to pack up your stuff and figure out your living situation. 3 weeks. They'd given me 3 weeks to completely upend my life and surrender my home. That works, I answered, taking a sip of water because my hands were trembling, and I needed something to do with them. I'll start packing this weekend. Get everything organized. Perfect! Mom beamed at me. I knew you'd understand. You've always been so mature and practical. Not everyone would be this generous. Generous. Like I'd volunteered for this instead of being railroaded. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. I smiled when I needed to, nodded at appropriate times, made generic encouraging sounds while Kayla talked about baby names, and Tyler explained his plans for turning my garage into a home gym. Every word felt like another nail in a coffin. Kayla showed me photos on her phone of the nursery furniture she'd already picked out, an expensive set from a boutique store that cost more than my car payment. It'll look amazing in that room with all the natural light, she gushed. I can't wait to get started decorating. My room, my light, my house. When I finally escaped to my car around 9, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I sat there in the driveway for a solid 10 minutes, engine off, staring at nothing. Then the rage hit. Not loud, screaming rage. Cold, quiet fury that filled my chest and made it hard to breathe. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over because my vision was blurring from tears. Sat in a random strip mall parking lot and cried until my throat hurt. Angry tears. Hurt tears. Years of accumulated frustration and disappointment pouring out all at once. Then I dried my face, took several deep breaths, and made a decision. If they wanted my house so badly, they could have it, just not the way they expected. 2 months earlier, my boss had called me into her office for what I'd assumed would be a routine check-in. Instead, she'd made me an offer. Senior compliance analyst position at our Chicago office. 35% pay bump, leadership role, significant career advancement. The catch? I'd need to relocate, leave behind my house, my city, my proximity to family. At the time, I'd been torn. The opportunity was incredible, but leaving felt like abandoning everyone. Mom had made comments about how families stay close and how real careers don't require moving across the country. Dad had questioned whether the pay increase was worth the higher cost of living in Chicago. Tyler had actually laughed and said I'd never survive in a big city. So I'd turned it down. Told my boss I appreciated the offer but wasn't ready to relocate. She'd been disappointed but understanding. If you change your mind within the next few months, the position's yours. We want you in Chicago, Brianna. You're exactly what that team needs. Now? Chicago sounded perfect. Not just perfect, necessary. When I got home that night, I didn't even go inside immediately. Just sat in my car in my own driveway, looking at my house. The little ranch I'd worked so hard to afford. The place where I'd finally felt like I was building something real and permanent. They wanted to take it away from me like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. Inside, I poured myself some juice and opened my laptop. Found my boss's email from 2 months ago and hit reply. Hi, Jennifer. I've been thinking about the Chicago position and would like to accept if the offer's still available. When would you need me to start? Her response came through within 20 minutes, even though it was almost 10 p.m. Offers absolutely still on the table. How soon can you be there? We'd love to have you by November 1st if possible. November 1st. 3 weeks away. Exactly the timeline Tyler had so generously given me to pack up my life. November 1st works perfectly. I'll need to handle some things on my end, but I can make that timeline. Thank you for this opportunity. We emailed back and forth for another 30 minutes, hammering out details. Salary, moving expense reimbursement, start date, apartment recommendations. By 11 p.m., I had a signed offer letter and a plan. The next morning, I called 3 real estate agents before finding one who specialized in quick sales. Explained my situation. Well, the sanitized version where I was relocating for work and needed to sell fast. She came over that afternoon, walked through the house, and gave me a realistic assessment. If you price it competitively, we can move this quickly, she said, pulling up comparable sales on her tablet. I'd suggest listing it for about $10,000 under market value. In this neighborhood, with these features, you should have multiple offers within a week. We listed it that same afternoon. The photos were done the following day. By Monday, my house was on the market, with a price that would attract serious buyers. I even included some of my furniture in the sale to make the process faster. The couch Tyler had his eye on. The dining set Kayla had mentioned she loved. They wouldn't be getting any of it. For 3 weeks, I played the role perfectly. Answered Mom's texts about preparing the house with vague affirmations. Yep, working on it. Packing things up. Getting organized. Never lying, but never telling the full truth either. When Tyler texted asking if I could leave my TV mounted on the living room wall since they didn't have one that nice, I responded, we'll see what works out. When Kayla called asking about paint colors for the nursery, every day, I systematically cut another tie to this place and these people. I hired movers for 3 weeks out, started packing room by room, labeling everything methodically, sold furniture that wouldn't fit in my new... Almost done packing, I'd tell them, which was true. Found a good situation, also true. My new Chicago apartment was great. Don't worry about helping, I've got it handled, which was the truest thing I'd said to them in years. Tyler sent me a long text message 3 days before their scheduled moving day. He'd clearly put thought into it, which was rare for him. Just wanted to say thanks for being so cool about all this. I know it's a big change for you, but this is really going to help us get on our feet. Having a stable place to raise the baby is everything. You're the best sister ever. I stared at that message for a long time. The audacity was almost impressive. They'd taken my house and he was thanking me like I'd volunteered it. Like this was a generous gift instead of outright theft. I didn't respond. The final week was surreal. I'd wake up in my mostly empty house, boxes stacked everywhere, and feel completely detached from the situation. Like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of living through my own. Wednesday, 2 days before closing, Kayla texted asking if I'd be around Saturday to help them move in. We've got a truck rented but could use extra hands. Plus, we want to take you out for dinner after as a thank you. Dinner. They wanted to take me to dinner after stealing my house. Using my own money from previous loans, probably. Sorry, not available Saturday, I texted back. Good luck with the move, though. Thursday night, my final night in the house, I slept on an air mattress in the empty living room. All my belongings were either packed for the movers or already in my car, which was loaded to the ceiling with essentials I'd need immediately in Chicago. Lay there staring at the ceiling I'd painted myself 2 years ago, listening to the familiar sounds of my house settling. For a moment, I felt guilty. Was this too extreme? Too cruel? Then I remembered the smug look on Tyler's face at dinner. Remembered Kayla planning renovations to my house without asking. Remembered 29 years of being second choice, backup plan, the reliable one who didn't matter. The guilt evaporated. Friday morning, movers arrived at 6 a.m. sharp. Professional, efficient crew that had everything loaded in under 4 hours. By 10:30, my entire life was in a truck heading for Illinois. I met the real estate agent at the title company for closing at noon. Signed approximately 4,000 documents, watched the money hit my account, handed over the keys to the new owners, a young couple who were genuinely excited about their first home. "The neighbors are really nice," the wife said as we chatted while paperwork processed. "We met the couple next door yesterday. They mentioned someone named Tyler was moving in. I told them we'd bought the place." "Interesting," I said, keeping my expression neutral. "I wonder who Tyler is." The new owners took possession immediately. Scheduled their own movers for tomorrow morning, the exact same time Tyler would be showing up with his rental truck, expecting to take over my life. By 2 p.m., I was on the road to Chicago. Tank full of gas, trunk full of essentials, phone fully charged. My movers would arrive at my new apartment the following day. Everything I owned was in transit to a new life. Around 3:30, approximately the time Tyler and Kayla were planning to start loading their truck, my phone started buzzing. I was somewhere on I-80, windows down, music loud, feeling freer than I'd felt in years. Didn't even look at the phone, just kept driving. By the time I finally pulled into my new apartment complex in Chicago around 7 p.m., I had 63 missed calls and 147 text messages. Grabbed my overnight bag, ignored my buzzing phone, and checked into my empty new apartment. Ordered takeout from a Thai place down the street. Sat on the floor of my unfurnished living room eating pad Thai straight from the container. My phone continued vibrating like an angry wasp trapped in my purse. Around 8, I finally looked. Mom's voicemails progressed from confused to angry, to panicked, to devastated. "Brianna, where are you? Tyler's at the house and there are strangers there saying they own it? Call us back. This isn't funny anymore. What is happening? Those people have a deed. How could you do this to your brother? To your family? Where will they live? Please, sweetheart, call us back. We can figure this out. Just tell us what's going on." Dad's messages were shorter, but more aggressive. "Explain yourself immediately. This is unacceptable behavior. Call me now. You've made a huge mistake. This will have consequences." Tyler sent approximately 40 messages, ranging from confused to furious. "What the hell is going on? There are people at your house saying they bought it. Did you seriously sell the house? Where are we supposed to go? Kayla's crying. She's pregnant. You're destroying my family. I can't believe you do this to me. I thought we were family. Screw you. You've always been jealous. This is low even for you." And Kayla contributed her own dramatic messages. "We're homeless because of you. You're taking away your niece's chance at a stable life. I'll never forgive you for this. Ever." Extended family started chiming in too. Clearly my parents had activated the family phone tree to apply maximum pressure. Cousin Lindsay, really mature Brianna, running away like a child instead of helping family. Aunt Beverly, "Your mother is devastated. I hope you're proud of yourself." Uncle Rich, "Some way to treat your brother when he needs you most." I scrolled through every message, every voicemail, every notification. Read them all while eating Thai food on my empty apartment floor. Then I typed one response to the family group chat. I accepted a promotion in Chicago and needed to sell my house. Closed yesterday. Good luck with everything. Then I blocked all of them. Mom, Dad, Tyler, Kayla, every cousin, aunt, and uncle who'd sent judgmental messages. Blocked them on my phone, on social media, everywhere. Every contact I severed felt like releasing a weight I'd carried for decades. My real estate agent texted me right before I turned my phone off. "Heard your family showed up at the house today? My client said it was quite dramatic. Hope everything's okay? Congrats again on the sale." I replied, "Everything's perfect. Thanks for all your help." Then I silenced my phone entirely, took a long hot shower in my new bathroom, and slept on an air mattress in my empty bedroom. Best sleep I'd had in months. Update. 6 months later. All right, Reddit. Enough people asked for an update that I figured I'd post one. It's been 6 months since I ghosted my family and started fresh in Chicago. Best decision I've ever made? Hands down. My new job is incredible. The team actually values my input and gives me credit for my work. I've already gotten another raise and was promoted to lead analyst for our entire compliance division. My boss nominated me for a company leadership development program that starts next month. Made actual friends here too. People who know nothing about my past and see me as just Brianna, not Tyler's sister, or the reliable one, or the backup plan. We explore the city, try new restaurants, Take weekend trips to Milwaukee or Indianapolis. Normal stuff I never had time for before because I was always managing someone else's crisis. Started dating someone I met at a work conference. He's a financial risk analyst from Minneapolis, incredibly smart, and treats me like an actual priority instead of an obligation. We've been doing the long-distance thing for 3 months, and it's going well. As for my family, I learned everything through Rachel, my old coworker who still lives in my hometown and loves drama. Tyler and Kayla moved into my parents' basement. The plan was supposedly temporary, just until they got on their feet. 6 months later, they're still there. 3 adults, 1 baby, and my parents' marriage, all crammed into a 1,200 square foot house that was already too small for 2 people. The cryptocurrency disaster got even worse after I left. Turned out Tyler had invested way more than the initial 10 grand. He'd maxed out credit cards, including 2 he'd opened fraudulently in my parents' names, borrowed from multiple payday loan companies, and convinced my parents to dump their entire retirement savings into his sure thing investment. When everything crashed, he was left with approximately $600 in worthless digital tokens and roughly $70,000 in debt across various sources. My parents had to take out a second mortgage just to cover the most urgent debts and avoid criminal charges for the credit card fraud. They're both still working in their mid-60s because retirement is no longer financially possible. The house I grew up in? They're losing it. Behind on the mortgage payments, foreclosure proceedings started last month. Rachel says my mom has aged 10 years and 6 months. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. They're looking at downsizing to a small apartment once the foreclosure finalizes. Tyler's working retail now at some big box store. His first steady job in years, probably because he literally has no other options. Makes about $11 an hour folding clothes and restocking shelves. Kayla got a job at a coffee shop but kept calling in sick, so she got fired after 3 weeks. She's been unemployed since, blaming her pregnancy and then the new baby for why she can't work. The baby, a girl, was born in April. They named her Brianna. According to Rachel, Kayla chose the name as some kind of peace offering. Like naming her daughter after me would magically fix everything they destroyed. Found out about the name from one of those family friend gossip networks. My first reaction was anger. How dare they use my name after what they did? But then I felt sad for that little girl, born into chaos through no fault of her own. So I did something I haven't told anyone about. Set up an anonymous trust fund for my niece. Hired a financial attorney. Established everything through shell entities so it can't be traced back to me. The fund will mature when she turns 18. Enough to cover 4 years of college tuition, plus some cushion for living expenses. Tyler and Kayla won't know it exists until she's legally an adult and they can't touch it. The documentation is ironclad. My niece will get a real chance to build her own life instead of being dragged down by her parents' terrible decisions. Because here's the thing, breaking cycles doesn't mean punishing innocent people. That baby didn't choose this mess. She deserves better than I got. My parents tried reaching out through mutual family friends. Had my Aunt Beverly call Rachel asking for my contact information. Had old family friends message me on LinkedIn. Even had someone from my old church email me about family healing. Ignored all of it. Then last month, something shifted. Got a letter forwarded from my old P.O. box. Return address from Gramps' assisted living facility. My stomach dropped when I saw it, because I'd been avoiding thinking about him. He'd always been caught in the middle of family politics, and I figured he'd sided with them after I left. The letter was in his shaky handwriting. Brianna, heard about what happened with your house and the move. Your mother has her version of events, but I know how your parents operate. I've watched them favor Tyler your whole life and it wasn't right. I'm sorry I didn't speak up more. I let them convince me that he needed more support in my will because you'd always be fine on your own. But I see now, you're fine because you never got the luxury of being helpless. I've changed everything. You'll get what's fair. I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself. Love, Gramps. I cried reading that letter. First time I'd cried about this whole situation since driving to Chicago. Not sad tears, grateful tears. Someone finally saw what had really happened. Someone finally acknowledged that I'd been treated unfairly my whole life, and it wasn't okay. Gramps passed away 2 months ago. Heart failure in his sleep. He was 92. I flew back for the funeral, stayed in a hotel, avoided my family the entire time. Sat in the back row during the service, slipped out before anyone could corner me, and flew back to Chicago the same day. The will reading happened last week. Gramps kept his word. Left Tyler exactly $1 and a note that said, "You got everything while you were alive. Time to earn your own way." Left my parents nothing. Everything else, his house, savings, investments, everything, came to me. After taxes and estate fees, roughly $380,000. My parents tried contesting it immediately, claimed Gramps wasn't mentally competent when he made the changes. Their lawyer took one look at the extensive medical documentation, showing Gramps had been sharp as ever, and told them they had no case. Tyler had a complete meltdown at the reading, started screaming about how I'd poisoned Gramps against him, how this was all my fault, how I'd destroyed the family. The attorney had security escort him out. According to Rachel's latest update, Kayla finally left Tyler 3 weeks ago, took baby Brianna and moved in with her parents 2 states away, filed for divorce citing financial irresponsibility and emotional neglect. Tyler's now living with my parents in whatever small apartment they end up renting after the foreclosure. 3 broke adults sharing close quarters while pretending everything's fine. Meanwhile, I'm thriving. Used part of Gramps' inheritance to buy a condo in a nice Chicago neighborhood. Paid cash, no mortgage. The rest is invested, securing my actual future. Had a night with my new friend group last week. Someone asked about my family, and I realized I'd gone 3 whole days without thinking about them once. They're becoming less relevant to my life with every passing day. My parents sent one final message through a mutual family friend, asking if we could talk, if there was any possibility of reconciliation. I sent back one sentence. There's nothing to reconcile. I'm not coming back. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. At 17, my family kicked me out after my cousin falsely accused me of SA. Years later, she tried to blackmail me for money, saying, "You owe me for not ruining you completely. You should be grateful and pay me." So I went nuclear and destroyed her life. All right, Reddit. When I was 17, my 15-year-old cousin got caught by her parents sneaking out to party with older guys. Then she framed me for harassment to cover her own butt. My own family turned their backs on me and got me kicked out. 13 years later, when I built my own business from nothing, she tried to blackmail me for $50,000. So I went nuclear and watched her whole world burn, while I kept building mine, grabbed something to eat because this gets wild. I, 32 male, was 17 when everything imploded. I was working part-time at an auto body in Phoenix making $8 an hour. November 2010 Thursday night. I just finished replacing brake pads on some lady's Lexus and got home around midnight. My cousin Ashley lived 3 houses down with my aunt and uncle 15 years old. Varsity volleyball, student council. Basically the golden child of the family. That night she ditched school with some senior she was trying to impress, got caught making out with him in his car at the mall parking lot by a family friend who immediately called her parents. I was in my room playing Call of Duty when I heard the screaming. My bedroom window faced their house, and the whole neighborhood could hear my uncle losing his absolute mind. My aunt was crying so loud I could make out words through the glass. Standard rich people discovering their kid isn't. Perfect meltdown. I turned up my headset and went back to the game. Then my phone blew up. My mom burst into my room without knocking. "Get downstairs, now." The way she looked at me, like I'd already done something wrong. Downstairs, my uncle and aunt were sitting on our couch. Ashley was next to them, mascara running down her face, shaking like she'd witnessed a murder. My dad stood in the corner with his arms crossed, that look on his face like he was about to watch someone get their butt kicked, and he was perfectly fine with it. "Tell him what you told us," my uncle said to Ashley, his voice cold. Ashley looked up at me with these big wet eyes. "I'm sorry, Walter. I didn't want to say anything. I was scared." My stomach dropped. "He's been texting me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "For months. Saying things. Sexual things today when I skipped school. It was because he threatened to show everyone screenshots if I didn't meet him." The room spun. "That's nonsense," I said. "I don't even have her number." "She showed us the messages," my aunt said. "Your number, your name, everything. Then she faked them. I never sent her a damn thing." My uncle stood up. "You calling my daughter a liar?" Yeah, I am." He got in my face. 6'2", former college linebacker, veins popping in his neck. "You sick little punk. She's your cousin and she is 15. I didn't do anything." My dad finally spoke up. "Show me your phone." "What?" "Your phone. Now." I pulled it out and handed it over. He scrolled through my messages while everyone watched, looking for evidence of something that didn't exist. "He could have deleted them," Ashley said quietly. And just like that, guilty. It didn't matter what my phone showed. It didn't matter that I could explain where I'd been when these texts were supposedly sent. My mom was crying now. Not for me. For Ashley. For the trauma this poor innocent girl had supposedly endured at the hands of her predator cousin. "Pack your stuff," my dad said. "You're not sleeping under this roof tonight." "Dad, I didn't..." I don't want to hear it. He threw my phone at my chest. You've got 30 minutes. Take what fits in your car. Everything else goes to Goodwill tomorrow. I looked at my mom. She wouldn't even meet my eyes 30 minutes. 17 years of life condensed into whatever fit in a backpack and 2 garbage bags. Clothes, my Xbox, some tools I'd bought with my own money, the $400 I had saved up from work. Left my bed, my desk, my posters, my childhood, left my freaking family. I drove to a Walmart parking lot and slept in my 2004 Civic that night. Woke up to texts from my dad saying I was officially cut off. No college fund, no health insurance, no family, just gone. By Monday morning, everyone knew my boss at the auto shop didn't fire me directly, just stopped putting me on the schedule. My girlfriend Emma stopped answering my texts. My buddies from school acted like I didn't exist. Small towns are like that. One accusation and you're done. Doesn't matter if it's true. The narrative is written and you're just living in it. I lasted 2 more weeks in Phoenix. 2 weeks of people staring at me at the grocery store. 2 weeks of former friends crossing the street. 2 weeks of being treated like a sex offender at 17 years old. The final straw came when someone keyed perv into my car door at the gym. Came out from the locker room to find it scratched deep into the paint, surrounded by people who definitely saw who did it but suddenly couldn't remember anything. That night I withdrew my $400, filled up my tank, and pointed my car east. Never looked back. Turned out living in your car at 17 was exactly as crappy as it sounded. I made it to Albuquerque first. Spent 3 days there before realizing it was too close. Too many Arizona plates. Too much risk of running into someone who knew someone from back home kept driving. Landed in Austin, Texas with $50 left and a quarter tank of gas. Austin was perfect. Big enough to disappear in. Young enough that nobody questioned a teenager hustling for cash. Weird enough that being a loner didn't make you suspicious. The first month was rough. Slept in my car behind a 24-hour gym where I had a $10 monthly membership just for the showers. Ate whatever I could afford at dollar menus. Worked day labor gigs through Craigslist. Moving furniture, digging ditches, whatever paid cash. But I was free. Nobody knew me here. Nobody crossed the street when they saw me. Nobody called me a predator. I picked up a regular gig at a construction site after a few weeks. Boss man didn't give a crap about my age as long as I showed up on time and worked hard cash every Friday. No questions asked. By month 3, I'd saved enough to rent a room in a house with 4 other dudes. $200 a month for a mattress on the floor and access to a bathroom. Sounded like luxury after the Civic. Got my GED at 18. Started taking night classes at community college. Business management, accounting, basic economics. I was good with numbers. Always had been. Days I worked construction. Nights I studied. Weekends I started flipping stuff on Craigslist and eBay. Buy broken electronics, fix them, sell them for profit. Bought a broken Xbox for $20, replaced a component I got off Amazon for $5, sold it for $80. Easy money if you had the time and patience. Within a year I had a system. Scout pawn shops and thrift stores for underpriced electronics. Fix whatever was wrong. List them online. Ship them out. Rinse and repeat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. By 2013, I'd moved into my own studio apartment, small as heck, but it had a real bed and a kitchen, and nobody else's stuff everywhere. Felt like a mansion. I kept flipping electronics, but scaled up laptops, gaming systems, phones, started buying in bulk from liquidation auctions. Some weeks I cleared $2,000 profit. That's when I realized I could turn this into something real. Registered an LLC in 2015. Torres Electronics Repair and Resale. Got a small warehouse space. Hired my first employee, some kid named Liam who was good with computers. The business grew faster than I expected. Turns out there's huge demand for refurbished electronics if you price them right and actually fix them properly. By 2018, we had 6 employees and contracts with several local businesses for their tech repairs. Dating was complicated. Hard to build something real when you're constantly paranoid about your past catching up. I dated. Had a few relationships that lasted a few months. But I always kept people at arm's length. Never let anyone get close enough to ask too many questions about my family or why I never talked to them. Then I met Hazel in 2022. She was smart, funny, didn't take crap from anyone. She asked me out first, which basically sealed the deal. Hazel knew I didn't talk to my family. I told her we'd had a falling out when I was younger, and left it at that. She didn't push. Said everyone's got stuff they don't want to discuss. We moved in together after 6 months. Got engaged after a year. My business was doing well, pulling in about $300,000 profit annually. I'd bought a house, a decent truck, had money in the bank. Not rich, but comfortable. More than comfortable. I'd freaking won. Started with nothing at 17 and built this all on my own. No family money. No college fund. No safety net. Just me and my refusal to let Ashley's lies define my life. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello? Walter? Walter Torres? The voice was older, but I recognized it instantly. Ashley. My blood went cold. Wrong number. Wait, don't hang up. Please, I need to talk to you. It's important. I should have hung up. Should have blocked the number. Should have thrown my phone in the damn river. Instead, I said, how did you get this number? I've been looking for you. For years, actually. It took forever, but I finally found you through your business registration. Torres Electronics. Pretty successful from what I can see. My jaw clenched. What do you want? I heard you got engaged. Congratulations. Her voice had this edge to it. Not friendly. Hazel, right? She's pretty. Are you freaking stalking me? Look, I'm in a really bad spot right now, Walter. I've got 2 kids. 2 dads, but both useless pieces of trash who don't pay child support. I'm working part-time at a med spa, but rent keeps going up and daycare is insane. I'm drowning here. I need help. Family helping family, you know. I actually laughed. You want money? I was thinking 50,000 would get me back on my feet. Car payment, catch up on bills, maybe a deposit on a better apartment. That's not that much for someone running a successful business. You're insane. Am I? Because I still have those screenshots, the ones from when you were harassing me. I kept everything, Walter. And you know what's crazy? They'd probably be really interesting to Hazel. I bet she doesn't know about your past, about what you did to your 15-year-old cousin. The rage hit me like a freight train. 13 freaking years of building a new life, and here she was, threatening to destroy it all over again. Hazel wouldn't believe you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You sure about that? I'm very convincing. I've had a lot of practice, and honestly, with 2 kids to feed and bills piling up, I've got nothing to lose. You, on the other hand, you've got everything to lose. Nice business, nice house, pretty fiancé. Would be a shame if it all came crashing down. Go screw yourself, Ashley. 50,000 by the end of the month, or I send everything to Hazel and your business partners. And anyone else who might care that Walter Torres isn't quite the stand-up guy everyone thinks he is, your choice. She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, hands shaking. After everything. After over a decade of building something from nothing. After finally finding someone who made me happy. This woman was really going to try and burn it all down for 50 grand because she couldn't keep her legs closed and picked deadbeat dads. I didn't tell Hazel. I thought Ashley was bluffing. 3 days later, Hazel came home from work early. I was in the garage working on a laptop repair when she walked in. The look on her face, cold, disgusted, horrified, I knew immediately. Hazel, don't. She held up her phone. Some woman named Ashley sent me a very interesting message. With screenshots. Of you sexually harassing her when she was 15. That's fake, all of it. She's lying. She said you'd say that. She said you've been running from this for years. That your whole family disowned you because of what you did. Because she lied. I never sent those messages. I never did anything to her. She made it all up to cover her own butt, and now she's trying to blackmail me for money. Hazel's expression didn't change. You never mentioned you had a cousin. You never mentioned being kicked out at 17. You never mentioned any of this. Because it was lies. Because I spent over 12 years building a life away from that toxic family and that lying manipulative. Stop. She shook her head. You know what? I knew something was off. I knew there was something you weren't telling me. I just didn't think it was this. You're believing her over me? I'm believing the evidence over your excuses. That's what I'm doing. What evidence? Fake screenshots that can be created in 5 minutes? That's what you're basing this on? You have no relationship with your family. You never talk about your past. You flinch every time someone asks where you grew up. I always thought it was just family drama. But this? This makes sense. This explains everything. She was looking at me like I was a stranger. Like the past 2 years meant nothing. Hazel, if you don't believe me, we are done. I'm done listening. I'm already done with this. She pulled off her engagement ring and set it on the workbench. There's always been something wrong with you. Something broken. I tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore. I can't marry someone capable of this. I'm not capable of anything. I didn't do anything. That's what they all say. She turned and walked toward the door. I'll be back tomorrow for my stuff. Don't be here. And just like that, she was gone. I stood in the garage holding that engagement ring, feeling exactly like I had at 17 wrongly accused. Instantly judged. Completely helpless. But I wasn't 17 anymore. and I was done being helpless. I spent that first night doing what I should have done 13 years ago. Building a case started with the basics. Pulled up every electronic record I could find from 2010. Bank statements showing where I'd been. Then I dug into Ashley's social media, was a goldmine. Her Facebook was public. Instagram too. I spent hours scrolling through years of posts. Her life laid out in carefully curated photos. And there they were. 2 kids. Caden, age 6. Madison, age 4. Different last names. Different dads based on the tags in old photos. One dad looked like a typical deadbeat, covered in crappy tattoos, holding a soda in every photo. The other was some wannabe SoundCloud rapper type who hadn't posted anything in 3 years. Her post told the whole story. Single mom struggling, working part-time, constant posts about how hard it was, how nobody helped her, how the dads were useless, passive-aggressive comments about bills and late rent, stories of eviction notices that she'd take down after an hour, but I screenshot them all. But here's what was interesting. She had a pattern. Her social media was full of subtle manipulation, posts about how hard her life was, how she'd been wronged, how people owed her. Every few months, some new crisis, some new injustice, always someone else's fault. I found posts from 2019 about how her ex-husband was financially abusing her by not paying her credit card bills after the divorce. Classic victim mentality. Professional victim, really. Nothing was ever her fault. Everyone was against her. 2 kids from 2 different deadbeats, and somehow it was the world's problem, not hers. I screenshot everything. I called my old buddy Liam. Dude was a wizard with computers and owed me for giving him his first real job. I need you to analyze some image files, I told him. Screenshots that are supposed to be from 2010. I need to prove that they are fake. Forensic analysis? Yeah, I can do that. Send them over. I forwarded him the screenshots Ashley had sent Hazel, the same ones she'd shown my parents 13 years ago. Liam called me back 3 days later. Dude, these are fake as heck. Whoever made them was sloppy. Show me. He walked me through it over video call, pulling up the images on his screen. First off, the timestamp formats are wrong. In 2010, iPhones displayed times differently. They used a lighter gray color and a different font weight. These show the darker, bolder style that didn't come until iOS 9 in 2015. Small detail, but it's there. He zoomed in on another section. See this? The battery icon. This design wasn't introduced until 2014. In 2010, it was more rectangular, less rounded. Again, tiny mistake, but it proves these weren't real screenshots from that time period. What else? Now here's the big one. The phone number. You said this was supposed to be your number back then? Yeah. The area code format is wrong. Arizona numbers in this interface should show differently based on contact storage. This looks like it was typed manually into a generator, rather than pulled from an actual contact list. The formatting gives it away. Liam scrolled through more details. I also checked the resolution and compression. These images have been saved and resaved multiple times. The JPEG artifacting shows generational loss, meaning they've been edited, exported, and manipulated. A true screenshot taken on an iPhone in 2010 and kept in photos wouldn't have this degradation pattern unless it went through multiple editing apps. Can you put all this in a report? Already working on it. Give me another day and I'll have a full forensic breakdown with annotations. This stuff would hold up if you ever needed it legally. Perfect, thanks, man. No problem. Whoever tried to frame you was an amateur. Left fingerprints all over this. I had everything I needed to bury her. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not enough to have evidence. You need them to hang themselves with their own rope. I was going to burn her life to the ground systematically, thoroughly, completely. But first, I needed her confession. On record. In her own words. I didn't want anyone to question the truth. I did some research on recording laws. Texas is a one-party consent state, meaning as long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, me, it's completely legal. Admissible in court. Usable as evidence? Perfect. I went to Best Buy and bought a small digital voice recorder. The kind that looks like a pen high-quality audio. 8-hour battery life. I tested it a dozen times to make sure it picked up everything clearly. Then I spent another week planning the approach. I needed Ashley to be comfortable. I needed her thinking she'd won. I needed her to confess naturally. Not because I was interrogating her, but because she felt safe enough to brag about it. I was going to get her to confess everything. And then I was going to use that confession to destroy her. But first, I needed to make one phone call. I called Ashley from a burner phone. Didn't want her having my real number. It's Walter. We need to talk. Oh, thank God. Does this mean you're going to... Meet me tomorrow, Dos Hermanos, the one on McDowell. Noon. Come alone. Why? Because you want your money, don't you? I could practically hear her smile through the phone. I'll be there. I showed up 30 minutes early, picked a booth in the back corner where the ambient noise was low enough that my recorder would pick up everything clearly, but loud enough that other diners wouldn't overhear our conversation. Set the pen recorder on the table, like I was just keeping it handy for notes. Hit record. Ashley walked in at 12:05. She'd aged rough. The golden child from 13 years ago looked tired and worn down. She slid into the booth across from me, eyeing me warily. So you came around. I'm considering it, I said. But I need to understand something first. Why now? Why after 13 years? She shrugged. I told you. I'm broke. 2 kids, lousy jobs, no help. You're doing well. Seemed like a logical solution. How'd you even think of this? The blackmail, I mean. A small smile crossed her face. I've always known where those screenshots were. I've thought about using them before, but never had the guts. Then I saw your business was doing well, and I figured, why not? You owe me anyway. I owe you. Sure. I had to live with the guilt of what happened for 13 years. That's got to be worth something. The recorder was capturing every word. I kept my face neutral. How'd you even make the screenshots back then? She leaned back, getting comfortable. This was the thing about Ashley. Get her talking about herself and she couldn't shut up. There was this app. You could fake text conversations. Make it look like anyone said anything. I spent like 2 hours that night making them look realistic. It was actually kind of fun in a messed up way. Must have been stressful though. 15 years old, making up all that stuff. I was freaking out, she admitted. I got caught with Noah and I knew my parents were going to kill me. Ground me forever. Probably pull me from volleyball. I needed something big to distract them. Something that would make them forget about what I did. She paused. You understand now, right? She continued. Don't take it personally. It could have been anyone. You just happened to be there. I wanted to reach across the table and strangle her, but I kept my voice calm. And you never felt bad about it? About what it did to me? She looked away. I mean, yeah, sometimes. But like, you landed on your feet, right? You're doing fine. Better than fine. So it all worked out. I was homeless at 17. But you're not homeless now. You got over it. I lost my family, my friends, my entire life. She rolled her eyes. Okay, so it sucked for a while. But you're successful now? You should actually thank me. All that struggle probably made you stronger or whatever. She leaned forward. Look, I don't have time for a guilt trip. Are you giving me the money or not? 50,000. That's what you said. That's the number. And if I don't, then Hazel gets more screenshots. Your business partners get a nice email. Maybe I file a police report. Say I'm finally ready to come forward about what you did to me 13 years ago. Really lean into the whole, I was too scared to report it then, but now I'm brave enough angle that plays well these days. You'd lie to the cops? I already lied to everyone else. What's one more? She smirked. Besides, nobody would believe you over me, poor single mom with 2 kids against some guy with a suspicious past and no family ties. Please. I'd be on the news as a survivor. You'd be on the sex offender registry. Every word, every confession, every threat. The recorder was getting all of it. What about your kids? I asked. You're really going to teach them that blackmail is okay? My kids are the reason I'm doing this. I'm about to get evicted again. You think I give a crap about morals right now? I'll do whatever it takes. So that's it. You ruined my life at 15. Now you're trying to ruin it again at 30. And you don't feel bad at all. She shrugged. I feel bad that I have to do this. But I don't feel bad about doing it. There's a difference. I sat back and crossed my arms. What if I could prove you lied? About all of it? Her smile faltered. You can't. What if I had forensic analysis? Proof that those screenshots were faked? Evidence showing all the little mistakes you made? That was 13 years ago. Nobody would care now. Courts would care, especially when I show them how you're currently committing blackmail. That's a felony. Ashley, 3 to 5 years if I press charges. You wouldn't. Try me. I leaned forward. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to post a full confession on social media, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. You're going to explain exactly what you did 13 years ago. How you faked the screenshots. How you lied to everyone. How you destroyed my life to save your own butt. And you're going to apologize. Publicly. No freaking way. Option 2. I take all this evidence plus the confession you just gave me. Yeah, I've been recording this whole conversation, one-party consent state, totally legal, and I file a lawsuit defamation, emotional distress, lost wages. I'll sue you for everything you're worth, which admittedly isn't much, but I'll make sure you spend the next decade in court. I'll file criminal charges for the blackmail. I'll send all of this to CPS and let them know what kind of person is raising those kids. I'll burn your life down so thoroughly, you'll wish you'd never heard my freaking name." The color drained from her face. "Walter, those are your options. Post the confession, take your lumps from your friends and family, and we're done. Or fight me on this and spend the next 13 years in legal trouble while I make it my personal mission to ruin you. My kids should have thought about your kids before you decided to blackmail me." She was shaking now. Real fear. Not the fake tears from 13 years ago. "What's it going to be?" She stared at me, at the reality that I had her completely cornered. "The confession," she finally whispered. "Fine, I'll post it. Today, right now. You're going to write it on your phone and post it before you leave this restaurant, and it better be detailed. It better explain everything, and if you try to delete it later, I've got screenshots, and I'll make sure everyone sees them." She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Ashley sat there for 20 minutes typing on her phone. I watched every word. Made her rewrite parts that weren't clear enough. Made her add details she tried to skip over. Made her take full responsibility without any nonsense excuses about being young or scared. When she was finally done, she showed me the draft. "Post it," I said. "Walter, please. My friends are going to see this. My family." I said post it. She hit the button. The status went live on Facebook. She switched to Instagram and posted the same thing there. I pulled out my own phone and screenshot everything. The confession. The timestamps. The whole thing. "One more thing," I said. "You're going to send this to my parents, and your parents, and everyone in the family. You're going to make sure they all see what you just posted. Walter, do it, or I start making calls to lawyers." She created a family group text, dropped the link to her confession, hit send. Within seconds, the replies started coming in shock, anger, disbelief. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Can I go now?" she asked, tears running down her face. Real ones this time. "One more thing, you ever contact me again, ever, and I file charges. You ever try to walk this back, claim you were coerced, say anything other than the truth? I've got this recording, I've got all the evidence. And I will mess up your life so badly, you'll need therapy just to remember what normal feels like. We clear? We're clear. Get out." She grabbed her purse and practically ran out of the restaurant. I sat there for a few minutes, watching the comments roll in on her post, her friends, her family, everyone who'd believed her 13 years ago now seeing the truth. My uncle commented, "How could you do this?" My aunt, "I can't believe you lied about something like this." My mom, "Where is Walter? Does anyone have his number?" Her own friends were turning on her in real time. Comments about what a terrible person she was, how they'd trusted her, how they couldn't believe she'd destroy someone's life like that. It was beautiful. I paid the bill, pocketed the recorder, and walked out of that restaurant feeling lighter than I had in 13 years. The confession spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, everyone in our extended family had seen it. Everyone from our hometown. Everyone in Ashley's social circle screenshots were being shared. The story was being dissected. People were taking sides. Most people were on my side. Finally, her employer saw it. Apparently, med spas don't love keeping receptionists who are known for filing false accusations. She got fired a week after the post went live. Her landlord saw it. She'd been late on rent for 3 months anyway, and the confession was the final straw. Eviction notice served within the week her friends turned on her. The comments on her confession post turned brutal. People she'd known for years suddenly saw her for what she was, a manipulative liar who destroyed an innocent person's life to save herself and felt no remorse until she got caught. Even her parents, my aunt and uncle, posted their own statement, a public apology to me for not believing me 13 years ago, an admission that they'd failed me as family, a promise to make things right. Too little, too late, but at least it was something. My parents tried calling me. I didn't answer. They left voicemails. My mom crying, apologizing, begging me to call back. My dad, for once in his life, admitting he'd been wrong, saying he should have fought for me, should have believed me, should have been a better father. The voicemails were nice to hear, I guess. Validation after over a decade of silence. But they didn't change anything. They'd thrown me away when I needed them most, said sorry only when the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. That's not love, that's covering their butts. I deleted the voicemails. Hazel showed up at my house 4 days after the confession went viral. I was in the garage working on inventory when she knocked. "Walter?" I didn't turn around. "Thought you needed space." I saw Ashley's confession, the whole story, everything she admitted to. I'm sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have believed you. This is in the past now. Can we talk about this? I finally turned around. What's there to talk about? You were pretty clear where you stand. I made a mistake. I want to fix this. I want us to fix this. You threw away 2 years because some stranger sent you screenshots. You believed her over me without question. You said I was capable of assaulting a 15-year-old. Why the heck would I want to fix that? Because you love me. Not anymore. Past tense. I went back to the laptop I was working on. You don't get to come back just because you realized you messed up. Actions have consequences. Walter, we're done, Hazel. I heard her crying, but I didn't look up. After a few minutes, I heard the ring hit the workbench. Then footsteps. Then the door closing. The best part of all this? Ashley's kids. CPS got an anonymous tip, definitely not from me, about a mother who'd admitted to filing false reports and attempting blackmail. They did a home visit, found out she was being evicted, found out she was behind on bills, found out she'd lost her job and had no income. The kids went to stay with her parents temporarily while Ashley got her stuff together, which, let's be honest, was probably never going to happen. My uncle sent me an email a week after everything went down. Long, rambling, trying to explain how sorry he was, how they'd been protecting their daughter, how they'd had no way of knowing she was lying, how they hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive them. He mentioned they were helping Ashley with the kids, that she was in a bad place, that maybe if I had it in me to help financially, it would go a long way toward healing the family. I laughed so hard I almost fell out of my chair. These people, these freaking people, threw me out at 17, believed lies without evidence, let me suffer for over a decade. And now they wanted me to help Ashley because she was struggling? Nah, hard pass. 6 months later, life had settled into a new normal. The electronics business was still doing well. I'd hired 2 more employees and expanded into commercial contracts. Money was steady. Reputation was solid. Ashley, from what I heard through the grapevine, was completely screwed. Lost her job, lost her apartment, living with her parents at 29 years old. Her kids were still with her parents because she couldn't afford her own place. Her friends had abandoned her. Her reputation was destroyed. The confession was still up on her social media. She'd tried to delete it once, but I'd screenshot everything and sent it to everyone who'd commented, made sure the internet never forgot what she'd done. Every time a potential employer Googled her name, that confession came up. Every time someone from the past looked her up, that confession came up. She'd successfully made sure the consequences of her actions would follow her forever. Good. As for me, I'd finally found peace with it all. For 13 years, I'd been carrying this weight, this anger, this need to prove I was innocent. And now I didn't have to prove anything. The truth was out there. The people who mattered knew what really happened. I didn't need anyone. I had my business, I had my life, and I'd built it all myself. Started a new hobby around this time, restoring classic cars. Bought a 1969 Chevelle SS for 12 grand from an estate sale. The family didn't know what they had. Thing was a rust bucket, but the frame was solid and the numbers matched. Spent my evenings in the garage rebuilding that car from the ground up, therapeutic as heck. Taking something broken and making it better than it was before. Felt appropriate given everything. When I finished the Chevelle 6 months later, I listed it on Bring a Trailer just to see what would happen. Sold for $68,000. That's when I realized I'd found my next venture. Started hitting estate sales, auctions, Craigslist ads, looking for project cars, buying them cheap, restoring them, flipping them for serious profit. The electronics business kept paying the bills. But the cars? The cars were paying for my future. Within a year, I'd restored and sold 12 vehicles. Average profit per car was about 35 grand. The money was stupid good. The work was satisfying. And nobody gave a crap about my past, because all that mattered was whether I could turn their rust bucket into a show car I was pulling in about 200 grand a year from restorations alone. Plus the electronics business. Plus smart investments I'd made with all that extra cash. At 31 years old, I was worth about $1.1 million. Not retirement money, but comfortable as heck. And I'd done it all without them, without my family, without Hazel, without anyone who doubted me. Just me, my tools, and my refusal to let other people's lies define my life. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My golden brother demanded half my business after years of no contact, and my mom backed him up, saying he's 10 times better than me. So I taught them a lesson they'll never forget for the rest of their lives. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but after everything that's happened in the past few months, I need to get this off my chest. I 35 male a software engineer who built a successful cybersecurity consulting firm from the ground up. My company now employs 47 people and generates about $12 million annually. Not bad for someone who started coding in his parents' basement 15 years ago. But this story isn't really about my success. It's about my toxic family and how they tried to destroy everything I'd worked for when they realized I'd actually made something of myself. Let me start with some background. I have a younger brother, Jake, who's 32. Growing up, Jake was the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, especially our mothers. While I was the quiet, studious kid who spent his time learning programming languages and building computers, Jake was the charming, athletic one who played varsity football and had girls constantly calling the house. Our parents, particularly Mom, made it crystal clear who their favorite was. When Jake needed a car for his 16th birthday, they bought him a brand new Mustang. When I turned 16 6 months later, they handed me the keys to our old Honda Civic that was already 8 years old and had 150,000 miles on it. When Jake wanted to go to parties, they'd give him money for gas and tell him to have fun. When I wanted to attend programming camps or buy computer equipment, I had to use money from my part-time job at the local computer repair shop. The favoritism was so blatant that even extended family members commented on it, but Mom would just smile and say that Jake needs more support because he's more social. Dad usually stayed quiet during these conversations, though I could sometimes catch him looking uncomfortable when Mom's bias was particularly obvious. Jake coasted through high school on his charm and athletic ability, getting into a decent state university on a partial football scholarship. I, meanwhile, earned a full academic scholarship to MIT. You'd think that would have impressed our parents, but Mom's reaction was to worry about how Jake would feel about his brother going to a better school. She actually suggested I should consider staying closer to home, so Jake wouldn't feel overshadowed. That conversation was probably the moment I realized I'd never be the favored son, no matter what I accomplished. College was liberating. For the first time in my life, I was valued for my intelligence and technical skills, rather than compared unfavorably to my brother. I thrived at MIT, graduating summa cum laude with a computer science degree, and immediately landing a job at a top tech company in Boston. Jake, meanwhile, blew out his knee junior year, lost his scholarship, and barely managed to graduate with a business degree that he never really used. But whenever I came home for holidays, Mom would spend hours talking about Jake's potential and how he was figuring things out, while barely asking about my career. The final straw came when I was 28. I'd just gotten engaged to Sarah, a brilliant data scientist I'd met at work, and I was planning to start my own company. When I shared this news with the family, Mom's first question wasn't congratulations or asking about my plans. It was whether I'd considered hiring Jake as a partner since he had a business degree. I politely declined, explaining that I needed someone with technical expertise, not general business knowledge, especially in the critical early stages. Jake laughed it off at the time, saying he wasn't interested in nerd stuff anyway, but I could see the disappointment in Mom's eyes. That Christmas dinner turned into a disaster when Mom kept pushing the issue, suggesting that as brothers, we should support each other's success. When I finally lost my patience and pointed out that Jake had never once supported my achievements or even shown interest in what I did for work, she accused me of being jealous of Jake's social skills and said I was being selfish. Jake sat there smirking through the whole argument, occasionally adding fuel to the fire with comments like, "Mom, you know how he's always been with money," or "Some people just aren't family-oriented." That was the last family gathering I attended. I went low contact after that, only responding to direct questions in family group chats and skipping holidays. Dad would occasionally call to check in, and I could tell he wanted to bridge the gap, but he'd never stand up to Mom's favoritism. Sarah and I moved to Austin 2 years later when I launched SecureFlow Solutions. The business grew rapidly. Turns out there's huge demand for cybersecurity consulting, especially from companies that have been hacked and need someone to fix their systems and prevent future breaches. Within 3 years, I had 15 employees. Within 5 years, I was pulling in 8 figures annually. I was careful to keep my success off social media and never discussed money with family during our rare conversations. Dad passed away from a heart attack 3 years ago, and while that was devastating, it also meant even less reason to maintain contact with Mom and Jake. The funeral was awkward. I hadn't seen Jake in person for almost 4 years, and he'd changed. Gone was the cocky athlete I remembered. He looked soft around the middle, had a patchy beard, and kept making comments about how lucky I was to have such a successful business. Mom spent the entire reception telling people how proud she was of both her sons, conveniently omitting the fact that she'd barely spoken to me in years. After the funeral, I expected we'd go back to our minimal contact routine. I was wrong. About 6 months later, my mom called me out of the blue. This was unusual. She typically only called on my birthday or major holidays, and even then, the conversations were stilted and brief. "Honey, I've been going through your father's papers," she began, "and I found something that I think you need to know about." She claimed that Dad had kept a journal where he'd written about his hopes for his son's futures. According to her, he'd specifically written that he hoped Jake and I would eventually work together, combining my technical skills with Jake's business acumen. She said Dad had always dreamed of his boys building something together. I was skeptical, but I also felt guilty about our strained relationship and wondered if maybe Dad really had hoped we'd reconcile through business. I told Mom I'd think about it, but I wasn't making any promises. 2 weeks later, Jake called me directly for the first time in years. "Hey, brother," he said, using a term of endearment he'd never used when we were kids. "Mom told me about Dad's journal. I've been thinking a lot about what he wanted for us." Jake explained that he'd been working various sales jobs since college, but had never found his calling. He said learning about Dad's wishes had made him realize that maybe we were meant to work together, that maybe he could help take my business to the next level. Despite my instincts screaming that this was a bad idea, I felt obligated to at least hear him out. We arranged to meet for lunch the following week when he'd be in Austin visiting friends. The lunch meeting should have been my first red flag. Jake didn't come alone. He brought his girlfriend, a woman named Melissa, who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. She was probably mid-20s, with long blonde hair, perfect makeup, and the kind of curves that made every man in the restaurant take a second look. "This is Melissa," Jake said proudly. "She's been helping me research your company and develop some ideas for how we could work together." Melissa smiled at me with perfectly white teeth and extended a manicured hand. "Jake's told me so much about you, David. I'm so impressed by what you've built. I have a background in marketing and business development, so I understand how challenging it must have been to grow a technical services company." I was immediately suspicious. Since when did Jake date women with business backgrounds? In high school and college, his girlfriends had typically been cheerleaders and party girls, not exactly the type to research cybersecurity companies. During lunch, Jake pitched his vision for our partnership. He wanted to come on as COO, handling all business development, client relationships, and company expansion. He claimed that with his people skills and business degree, he could help me scale the company nationally, maybe even internationally. "Think about it, David," he said, leaning forward earnestly. "You're brilliant at the technical stuff, but you've always been more comfortable behind a computer than in a boardroom. I could handle all the client-facing work, the networking, the big picture strategy. We'd be unstoppable together." Melissa nodded enthusiastically. "Jake has such natural charisma. I bet your clients would love working with him. And imagine how much more you could focus on innovation if you didn't have to worry about all the business side of things." I listened politely, but kept my responses non-committal. Jake seemed to interpret my silence as interest, because by the end of lunch, he was talking about specific percentages. "I was thinking a 50-50 partnership would be fair," he said casually, as if he were discussing the weather. "After all, Dad always said we were equals, and you'll need someone with real business experience if you want to compete with the big consulting firms." I nearly choked on my coffee. A 50-50 split? For someone who'd never worked a day in cybersecurity and hadn't been part of building the company from nothing. "Jake," I said carefully, "I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself. This is just an exploratory conversation." His face darkened slightly, but Melissa quickly jumped in with a dazzling smile. "Of course. We're just excited about the possibilities. Why don't we all get together again soon? Maybe I could see your office? I'd love to understand more about what you do." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. There was an undertone to her voice, a suggestion that she wanted to understand more than just my business. After they left, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Jake had gone from barely speaking to me for years to demanding half my company based on some supposed journal entry from Dad that I'd never seen. And this Melissa woman, there was something off about her. I decided to do what I do best: research. That evening, I started digging into Jake's recent history. Social media stalking revealed that he'd been unemployed for the past 8 months, after being fired from a car dealership for performance issues. His LinkedIn showed a pattern of short-term jobs, mostly in sales, with gaps between positions growing longer over time. Melissa was more interesting. Her Instagram showed the lifestyle of someone with money: expensive clothes, fancy restaurants, exotic vacations. But when I did a deeper dive, I found that her marketing and business development background was mostly working for multi-level marketing schemes and consulting for small businesses that had all failed within a year of hiring her. Most telling, though, was that Jake and Melissa had only been dating for 4 months, but every single one of her recent posts was designed to look like they'd been together much longer. She'd even posted old photos with other men, but cropped them out and added captions about my love that made it seem like she and Jake had a long history. This was starting to smell like a con. I called my lawyer, Mike Chen, who'd helped me set up the company initially. I explained the situation and asked him to review my corporate documents to make sure there was no way Jake could have any legitimate claim to ownership. David, unless you signed something or your father had some kind of ownership stake that I'm not aware of, there's no way Jake has any legal claim to your company, Mike assured me. But I'd be careful about any new contracts or agreements, and maybe we should think about tightening up your corporate structure. Meanwhile, Jake started calling me every few days, each time more pushy about moving forward with our partnership. He'd send me articles about successful brother business teams and kept mentioning Dad's supposed wishes. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later when Melissa texted me directly. "Hey David, I was wondering if you wanted to get coffee sometime? Just the two of us. I feel like we didn't really get to connect during lunch, and I have some ideas that might interest you." The winky emoji made her intentions pretty clear. I decided to play along and see what she was really after. We met at a trendy coffee shop in downtown Austin. Melissa had clearly dressed to impress, a low-cut blouse, short skirt, and heels that made her legs look like they went on forever. She spent the first 20 minutes asking detailed questions about my business, my clients, my revenue, my expansion plans. Then she started getting personal. "Jake's told me so much about your relationship growing up," she said, leaning closer. "He feels terrible that you two grew apart. He really looks up to you, you know?" This was news to me, considering Jake had spent our entire childhood treating me like an annoying afterthought. "He's been researching cybersecurity nonstop since you two had lunch," she continued. "He's so excited about the possibility of working together. I think he sees it as a chance to finally have the kind of relationship with you that he's always wanted." I made non-committal responses while she kept probing for more information about my business operations, my biggest clients, my profit margins. It was clear she was fishing for intelligence, not trying to build a relationship. Then she made her move. "David, can I be honest with you?" she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "I think Jake might be selling himself short. From what I can see, you've built something amazing, but there's so much untapped potential. Someone with the right connections could help you expand in ways you've never imagined." Her hand lingered on mine, and she gave me a look that was definitely not about business development. "Maybe we should get together sometime when we can really talk," she purred. "Without Jake around, I think you and I could accomplish great things together." Bingo. She was trying to seduce me, probably hoping to get insider information she could use to help Jake in whatever scam they were running. I smiled and played dumb. "That's interesting, Melissa. What kind of connections are you thinking about?" For the next hour, she fed me a line of bullshit about investors she supposedly knew, government contracts she could help me land, international expansion opportunities. None of it was specific enough to be real, but all of it was designed to make me think she was the key to taking my business to the next level. As she talked, she kept finding excuses to touch my arm, lean in close, or make suggestive comments about how we could explore possibilities together. It was both pathetic and infuriating. When we parted ways, she hugged me just a little too long and whispered, "I hope we can do this again soon. I think we have a lot to offer each other." That night, I set up a hidden camera system in my home office and started recording every conversation I had with Jake or Melissa. I had a feeling I was going to need evidence of whatever they were planning. Sure enough, Jake called the next day, more aggressive than ever. "Dave, I've been patient, but I need to know where we stand," he said. "Melissa thinks you're interested in moving forward, and I don't want to waste any more time. I need to know if you're serious about honoring Dad's wishes." "What exactly did Dad write in this journal?" I asked. "I'd like to see it before making any major decisions." There was a pause. "Well, Mom has it, and she's not comfortable sharing it right now. It's too emotional for her, but she told you what it said." "Jake, I can't make a business decision based on secondhand information about a document I've never seen." His tone shifted to barely controlled anger. "Are you calling Mom a liar? Are you saying she's making this up?" "I'm saying I'd like to see evidence before giving away half of the company I built from scratch." "Giving away?" he exploded. "This isn't giving anything away. This is honoring our father's memory and finally working together like a real family. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You've always been selfish when it comes to family." I hung up on him. 2 days later, Mom called, crying. "David, honey, Jake is so hurt," she sobbed. "He just wants to be close to his brother. Why are you being so stubborn about this? Your father would be heartbroken to see you two fighting." Mom, I'm not fighting with anyone. I just want to see this journal entry before making any business decisions. I can't show it to you right now. It's too painful. But I promise you, David, your father wanted his boys to work together. He was so proud of both of you. This was rich, considering Dad had barely known what I did for work and had never once visited my office or asked about my business. If Dad really wanted us to work together, why didn't he ever mention it to me when he was alive? I asked. Mom's crying intensified. Because he didn't want to pressure you. He knew you needed to find your own way first. But now that you're successful, it's time to help your brother. There it was. The real truth. This wasn't about Dad's wishes or bringing the family together. This was about Mom wanting me to take care of her golden child now that Jake had proven incapable of supporting himself. I told Mom I needed time to think about it, and hung up. That weekend, Melissa texted me again, suggesting we meet for drinks. I agreed, curious to see how far she'd push things. She showed up at the upscale bar wearing a dress that was barely legal, and made sure to sit close enough that her leg pressed against mine. After 2 drinks, she was practically in my lap. David, I'm going to be direct with you, she said, her hand on my thigh. I think you and I have chemistry, real chemistry, and I think we could help each other in ways that go beyond business. She leaned in close, her lips nearly touching my ear. Jake doesn't have to know about our private consultations. I could give you information that would help you make the right decisions about the partnership, and you could help me understand how a really successful man operates. I almost laughed at how obvious she was being. Instead, I decided to test something. That's interesting, Melissa. What kind of information are you thinking about? She smiled seductively. Well, I know Jake's been talking to some lawyers about his rights to the company. He seems to think he might have stronger legal grounds than you realize. But if we had our own arrangement, I could make sure you stay ahead of whatever he's planning. Now we were getting somewhere. What lawyers? I probably shouldn't say, she said coyly, trailing her finger along my arm. But maybe if we went somewhere more private, I could tell you more. I made an excuse about having an early morning meeting and left her at the bar looking frustrated. The next morning, I hired a private investigator named Tom Rodriguez, who specialized in financial fraud cases. I gave him everything I had on Jake and Melissa and asked him to dig deeper. What he found was even worse than I'd suspected. Tom discovered that Melissa's real name was actually Miranda Walsh, and she had a history of targeting successful men in various scams. Her MO was to identify wealthy targets, research their family dynamics, then position herself as someone who could help manipulate family relationships for financial gain. Jake, meanwhile, had been contacting lawyers, but not about legitimate ownership claims. He'd been shopping around for attorneys who would help him file nuisance lawsuits against my company, hoping to force me into a settlement rather than deal with prolonged legal battles. Most damning of all, Tom found text messages between Jake and Melissa. He had contacts in the cell phone industry who could access deleted messages for legal investigations. The messages revealed their entire plan. They'd been planning this scam for months, ever since Jake had discovered through mutual acquaintances how successful my company had become. Melissa had researched my business, my personal life, and my family dynamics. They'd coached each other on how to approach me, with Melissa playing the role of the supportive girlfriend while also being available as a backup plan if seduction worked better than family pressure. The journal story was completely fabricated. In fact, the text messages showed them laughing about how gullible I was and how easy it would be to manipulate me using Dad's memory. Their plan was multi-pronged. Jake would pressure me using family guilt while Melissa gathered intelligence through seduction. If I agreed to any kind of partnership, they'd use that foothold to gradually take over more of the company. If I refused, Jake would file harassment and discrimination lawsuits claiming I was denying him opportunities based on family bias, hoping to force a settlement that would give him money even without ownership. But the most enraging part was a message from Jake to Melissa that said, "David's always been a pushover when it comes to family. Mom's got him trained to feel guilty about everything. This is going to be easier than we thought." Reading those messages made my blood boil. They thought I was some kind of weak, guilty pushover they could manipulate with fake tears and family pressure. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I spent the next 2 weeks carefully planning my response. First, I had Mike Chen draft airtight cease and desist letters to both Jake and Melissa, explicitly forbidding them from making any claims about ownership in my company and warning them that any attempts to interfere with my business relationships would result in legal action. Then I did something that would have been unthinkable a month earlier. I decided to go nuclear on my own family. I gathered all the evidence Tom had collected, the text messages, the background checks, the financial records showing Jake's unemployment and Melissa's scam history, and compiled it into a comprehensive dossier. On a Thursday evening, I called Jake and told him I'd made my decision about the partnership. "I've thought about Dad's wishes," I said, "and I think you're right. We should be working together. Why don't you and Melissa come to my office tomorrow afternoon? I'll show you around, we can discuss terms, and maybe we can make this partnership official." Jake was ecstatic. "David, you won't regret this. We're going to build something incredible together. This is what Dad would have wanted." I scheduled the meeting for 3 p.m. on Friday, knowing that most of my employees would still be in the office to witness whatever happened. Friday afternoon, Jake and Melissa arrived dressed like they were already executives of my company. Jake wore an expensive suit that he probably couldn't afford, and Melissa was in a power dress that somehow still managed to show enough cleavage to be inappropriate for a business meeting. I welcomed them into my office, where I'd set up a conference table with folders, legal pads, and water bottles, all the props of a serious business meeting. "Before we get started," I said, "I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're discussing here." Jake nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. I'm thinking we start with a 50-50 partnership, like we discussed, and then we can talk about expansion plans, new markets, maybe bringing Melissa on as our marketing director." Melissa smiled and nodded. "I have so many ideas for growing the business. I think we could double your revenue within the first year." "That sounds ambitious," I said, opening one of the folders on the table. "Before we move forward, though, I need to address a few concerns." I slid a copy of the private investigator's report across the table to Jake. This is a background check I had done as part of my due diligence. Jake's face went pale as he saw the first page, which included Melissa's real name and a summary of her scam history. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "It's the truth about your girlfriend and your little plan to defraud me," I said calmly. "Did you really think I wouldn't investigate before giving away half my company?" Melissa tried to maintain her composure. "David, I don't know what you think you found, but I know your real name is Miranda Walsh," I interrupted. "I know you've been involved in at least 4 similar scams targeting wealthy men. I know you've been coaching Jake on how to manipulate me using our family relationships." I opened another folder and pulled out copies of their text messages. "I also know that Dad never wrote anything about wanting us to work together, because this entire story is something you two made up. These are your text messages discussing how to fool me." Jake's face had gone from pale to red. "You had our phones hacked? That's illegal." "No, Jake, it's not. This was obtained through a legitimate legal investigation, which brings me to the best part." I opened a third folder and pulled out copies of his communications with various lawyers. "I know you've been shopping around for attorneys who would help you file nuisance lawsuits against my company. I know your plan was to either manipulate me into giving you ownership or force me into a settlement through frivolous legal action." By now, both Jake and Melissa were looking like trapped animals. Jake stood up abruptly. "You know what, David? Fuck you. I don't need your charity. I was trying to help you out of family loyalty, but clearly you don't give a damn about family." "Sit down, Jake," I said firmly. "We're not done." Something in my tone made him hesitate. "See, the thing is, I do care about family. I care about protecting myself and my business from family members who think they can scam me. So I've taken some precautions." I opened the final folder and pulled out copies of the cease and desist letters Mike had prepared. "These are legal notices formally warning both of you to stop making any claims about ownership in my company and to cease any attempts to interfere with my business. If you violate these terms, I will sue you for harassment, attempted fraud, and business interference." Melissa found her voice. "You can't prove we did anything illegal. Maybe not criminal fraud," I agreed, "but I can prove attempted extortion, harassment, and conspiracy to interfere with my business relationships. I can also prove that you've been using a false identity and have a history of similar scams." I leaned back in my chair. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to sign acknowledgments that you have no claim to any ownership in my company. You're going to agree to have no further contact with me, my employees, or my business partners. And Jake, you're going to tell Mom the truth about this whole ridiculous scheme." Jake's jaw dropped. "I'm not telling Mom anything. She believes in us working together." "Oh, but you are," I said, smiling for the first time since they'd arrived. "Because if you don't, I'm going to send copies of this entire investigation to every member of our extended family, along with a detailed explanation of how you tried to defraud your own brother using Dad's memory." I pulled out my phone and showed them the draft email I'd prepared with about 30 family members in the recipient list. "I'm also going to post it on social media and tag everyone we went to high school with. I think they'd be very interested to learn what Jake Morrison has been up to lately." Melissa looked like she was going to be sick. "You wouldn't actually try me," I said flatly. I built this company from nothing while dealing with a family that never supported me. You think I'm going to let you destroy it with lies and manipulation? You picked the wrong target. Jake was staring at the email on my phone, probably calculating how many people would see it and how humiliating it would be. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want you to sign these agreements, leave my office, and never contact me again unless someone is dying. I want you to tell Mom that you lied about Dad's journal and that this whole partnership idea was a scheme you cooked up because you're unemployed and desperate. I stood up and walked around the table to face them directly. And I want both of you to understand that if you ever try anything like this again, if you ever mention my name to a lawyer, if you ever claim any connection to my business, if you ever come anywhere near my employees or my office, I will dedicate every resource I have to destroying your lives. I will sue you into bankruptcy. I will make sure everyone you know understands exactly what kind of people you are, and I will use every contact I have in the business world to make sure neither of you can ever find decent employment again. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Jake reached for the pen. This is really fucked up, David, he muttered as he signed the papers. No, Jake, I replied. What's fucked up is trying to steal from your own brother and using your dead father's memory to do it. What's fucked up is bringing a con artist into our family to help you commit fraud. What's fucked up is thinking you could manipulate me the same way Mom manipulated me when we were kids. Melissa signed next, her hand shaking slightly. There's one more thing, I said as they prepared to leave. Jake, I want you to call Mom right now and tell her the truth. You're going to call her, put it on speaker, and explain that you made up the journal story because you wanted money from me. If you don't, that email goes out to the family in 1 hour. Jake's shoulders slumped in defeat. He pulled out his phone and dialed Mom's number. Hi, Mom, he said when she answered. I'm here with David, and I need to tell you something. Oh, that's wonderful. Are you boys finalizing the partnership? Jake looked at me with pure hatred in his eyes. No, Mom, there's not going to be a partnership. I need to tell you that I made up the story about Dad's journal. There was a long pause. What do you mean? I mean, Dad never wrote about wanting us to work together. I made that up because I thought I could convince David to give me part of his company. I could hear Mom's sharp intake of breath through the phone. Jake, what are you saying? I'm saying I lied to you and to David because I'm broke, and I thought this was a way to fix my problems. I'm sorry, Mom. I know this is disappointing. The silence stretched out for nearly 30 seconds before Mom spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. Jacob Morrison, how could you do this? How could you lie about your father's memory like that? For the first time since I'd known him, Jake looked genuinely ashamed. I'm sorry, Mom. I was desperate and I thought, you thought you could steal from your brother and drag me into it? She said, her voice getting stronger. You thought you could use me to pressure him into giving you something you had no right to. Mom, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, she snapped. My God, Jake, what has happened to you? Jake looked at me again, probably hoping I'd intervene, but I just stared back at him impassively. I'm disappointed in both of us, Mom continued. I'm disappointed in you for lying and trying to cheat your brother, and I'm disappointed in myself for believing you without question. David, are you there? I'm here, Mom. Honey, I am so sorry. I should have asked more questions. I should have realized I just wanted so badly for you boys to have a relationship that I didn't stop to think about whether this made sense. I felt a tiny bit of my anger toward her soften, but only a tiny bit. Mom, we'll talk later. Right now, I need Jake and his girlfriend to leave my office. Jake has a girlfriend? Mom asked. Jake shot me a warning look, but I was done protecting him. Her real name is Miranda Walsh, and she specializes in conning money out of successful men by manipulating their family relationships. She and Jake have been planning this scam for months. The silence on the phone was deafening. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice cold as ice. Jake, you get yourself home right now. We are going to have a very long conversation. After Jake hung up, he and Melissa gathered their things and headed for the door. Jake paused at the threshold. David, I know you hate me right now, but we're still brothers. I looked at him for a long moment, thinking about everything we'd been through, the years of favoritism, the constant comparisons, the way he'd treated me growing up, and now this ultimate betrayal. No, Jake, I said finally. Brothers don't try to steal from each other. Brothers don't lie about their dead father to commit fraud. You're just someone I used to know who happens to share some DNA. He flinched like I'd hit him, but he didn't argue. After they left, I sat in my office for a while, processing everything that had happened. My assistant knocked on the door to check if I was okay. Apparently, the tension had been visible even through the glass walls. I called Sarah to tell her what had happened. She'd known about Jake's initial approach and had been suspicious from the start. "I'm proud of you for standing up to them," she said. "I know that couldn't have been easy." It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For the first time in my life, I'd refused to be manipulated by family guilt and had protected what I'd worked so hard to build. Over the next few weeks, I heard through Mom that Jake had moved back in with her temporarily while he looked for work. Apparently, Melissa Miranda had disappeared immediately after our confrontation, leaving Jake to face the consequences alone. Mom called me a few days later to apologize again and to ask if there was any way I could forgive Jake. "Mom, Jake is 32 years old," I told her. "He's not some confused kid who made a mistake. He spent months planning to defraud me, brought a career criminal into our family, and tried to use Dad's memory to steal from me. Those aren't the actions of someone who deserves forgiveness." "But he's your brother." "No, Mom. He's your son, and you can have whatever relationship with him you want. But he's not my brother anymore. Brothers don't try to destroy each other." I wasn't completely heartless, though. A month later, when I heard that Jake was genuinely looking for work and had enrolled in a community college program to get some new skills, I had a friend who runs a small marketing company give him an interview. Jake got the job, an entry-level position that paid about a tenth of what he'd been hoping to steal from me, but it was honest work. I never told Jake that I'd helped him get the interview. I figured if he was really trying to turn his life around, he could do it without knowing I'd been involved. As for Mom and me, we're slowly rebuilding our relationship. She's made a real effort to understand why the favoritism hurts so much and has acknowledged that she contributed to Jake's entitlement issues. We have lunch once a month now, and she's made it clear that she's proud of what I've accomplished. After years of sacrifice, my parents left me out of the will saying my purpose was to serve my brother. So I cut them off, thinking that was the end, until they revealed a secret that wrecked my world. Hey, Reddit. I never thought I'd be the guy posting one of these, but here we are. My family always treated me like the steady one, the one who had to fix everything while my brother coasted through life. I put up with it for years. Bills, repairs, bailouts, you name it. But stick with me till the end. Because what I discovered about why they really leaned on me, it flipped my whole life upside down. Growing up, I always thought being the younger brother meant I'd get away with more. You know? Less pressure, less responsibility, more time to screw around. But somehow in my family, it flipped. My older brother Harry got the free pass, and I got the leash tied to responsibility. Jacob, 27 male now, and it's wild how obvious the favoritism looks when you stack up the history. Harry, 31 male, hasn't held a steady job longer than 6 months, still crashing at my parents' house, working on his music. And when I say music, I don't mean tours or albums or even a local bar gig. I mean plugging his guitar into an amp in the garage and recording clips that never break 200 views online. My parents talk about him like he's one open mic away from a Grammy. Delusional doesn't even cover it. Meanwhile, I've been the guy patching every hole in their sinking ship for years. Dad needed back surgery a while back. Couldn't work for months. I covered the mortgage. Furnace died right before a snowstorm. I wired the contractor the full amount. No questions asked. Mom had a run of medical bills and their insurance lapsed. I took care of it. I've even paid their property taxes multiple times, including a $2,100 hit last year that I covered without hesitation. You'd think all that effort would earn me something, right? Maybe some respect? Maybe even just a thank you? Nah. Their go-to line was always, "You've always been fine, you're steady. Harry just needs help right now." The right now has been 10 years. Here's the thing, though. I'm not some pushover. I'm not sitting in a basement whining about being overlooked. I've got my own career. I'm not emotional about it. I see the game for what it is. They want a safety net, and I've been dumb enough to play trampoline for everyone. So there I was, standing in their living room, helping Dad with paperwork like usual. The man still hasn't figured out the scanner-printer combo, and it's been 10 years. He piles documents on the dining table, then pats me on the shoulder like I'm his unpaid secretary. "You're good with this tech stuff," he says. "I've been in project management for years, but sure, Dad. Let's pretend I'm Geek Squad." I flip through the stack. Medical forms, utility bills, Medicare junk, routine stuff. Then I see it. A cream-colored folder labeled neatly in Mom's handwriting. Estate plan. Final copy. Now look, I'm not nosy. Normally I wouldn't open it. But two things. One, I literally paid their property taxes the week before, and two, I knew deep down that if I didn't look, I'd regret it. So yeah, I opened it. Inside was their will, notarized just 2 months ago. I skimmed, and right there in black ink was the part that froze me. House. Harry. Retirement accounts. Harry. Life insurance policy. Harry. Everything. Harry. My name wasn't anywhere. Not even a sentence about splitting things equally. Not even a thank you. Just the same closing line they love to say. We love both of our children equally and trust them to care for one another. Care for one another? Translation. Harry gets the rewards, and you, dependable little brother, get to keep cleaning up his mess forever. I just stood there staring at it while the scanner hummed like background noise. My hands were steady, but my chest was hot. I wasn't angry yet, more like cold, like someone just confirmed what I already knew, but didn't want to admit. You have to understand, I gave up a lot for these people. I turned down a better paying job in another city because Mom said she couldn't sleep at night if I lived too far away. I stayed close, kept bailing them out, carried their problems like it was my second job, all so they could erase me with one neat signature on a piece of paper. And Harry? The guy who never paid a bill in his life, the guy who forgets to help with groceries, the guy who pawned half his stuff to buy speakers he didn't even need. He gets it all. Of course he does. It was almost funny. Almost. I put the folder back exactly where I found it, because I already knew what was coming. I knew what excuse they'd use when I confronted them. Same old line, you'll be fine. You're steady. Harry needs it more. The difference this time, I wasn't steady for them anymore. That night, I went back inside with the will still burning in my head. Mom was in the kitchen rinsing her mug. Dad was at the table flipping through the mail like nothing had happened. Harry was in the living room strumming his guitar, probably pretending to be deep. It was like watching three people in denial, each convinced I'd fall back into my role if they ignored the fact that I'd just seen the script. I dropped the folder on the table. So this is it? I asked. Dad looked up, tight-jawed. Son, you've got to understand. No, I cut him off. I really don't. You wrote me out like I never existed. Mom dried her hands, came closer with that tone parents use when they're about to sell you something stupid. It's not about you, honey. Harry he needs more stability. You've always been successful. You don't need us to leave you anything. There it was. The great family motto. You're fine. Harry isn't. I glanced toward the couch. Harry smirked like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar who knows Mom's going to defend him anyway. He didn't even look embarrassed. Just smug, like my outrage was beneath him. You're kidding me, I said. The guy hasn't worked in years. He's still here eating your groceries and wasting electricity recording garage demos, and you want to bet the house on him? Don't talk about your brother like that, Dad snapped. Why not? You two act like he's the second coming, but the guy can't even pay his phone bill. Harry finally spoke, strumming a chord like he was scoring the moment. Not my fault you chose the boring life, man. I'm just chasing my dreams. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Chasing? Harry, you've been standing still so long the dream probably filed a missing persons report. That one hit him. He stopped strumming, but Mom jumped in before he could answer. Stop, both of you. This isn't a competition. We just know you'll be fine without our help. Harry, he needs this. And there it was again. Entitlement, wrapped up as charity. I realized right then there was no point arguing. They weren't listening. They never had. So I walked out. But this time, I didn't just cool off. I started pulling strings, quietly, systematically. First thing I did when I got home was open my banking app and cancel every autopay tied to their address. Utility bills? Gone. Pharmacy refills? Not my problem. Grocery delivery every Thursday at 4? Paused indefinitely. I deleted the reminders I set for myself to call the credit card company, to check their accounts, to transfer them money when their buffer ran out. I didn't announce it. No text, no dramatic speech, just silence. If they thought I was the steady one, I'd show them what happens when the foundation disappears. And that's when the next betrayal landed. I was cleaning out my closet, boxing up some old things for storage, when I noticed something missing. My watch. Heavy, stainless steel, nothing flashy, but it was gifted from a close friend. I tore through my stuff thinking maybe I misplaced it. No luck. So I called a buddy of mine who works at a pawn shop across town just to check. He knew right away. Yeah, your brother came in with a watch last month. Said it was his. Didn't look like his style, so I remembered it. I felt my jaw clench. Harry? Of course. I drove straight to my parents' house. Walked in without knocking. Harry was in the kitchen eating cereal like a king who earned it. Where's my watch? I asked. He blinked, spoon halfway to his mouth. What watch? The one my friend gifted me. He smirked, shrugged. Relax, man. You weren't wearing it. I needed some quick cash. You're good with money, right? You'll get another. Before I could answer, Mom stepped in, holding laundry. Don't make a scene. Harry needed the money. I turned to her, floored. You knew? She wouldn't look at me.
He promised he'd pay it back. I laughed. Sharp, bitter. Pay it back with what? Exposure bucks from his SoundCloud? Harry slammed the spoon down. See? This is why nobody likes dealing with you. You make everything a big deal. It's just a watch. No, I said, stepping closer. It's the principle. You steal from me, and they cover it. That's what this family is. Dad finally appeared, muttering something about not blowing things out of proportion. But I was already done. I looked Harry dead in the eye. You're not my problem anymore. Then to Mom and Dad, neither are you. And I walked out, leaving them stunned. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about everything. Every bill, every sacrifice, every time they leaned on me like it was owed. And now, after the will, after the excuses, after Harry stealing from me and them protecting him, yeah, it was time. I decided right then they were going to feel what it's like when I'm not there. Not steady, not reliable, not the safety net. They were going to fall. And this time, I'd let them hit the ground. It didn't take long for the texts to start rolling in. At first, they were casual, like maybe I'd slipped, forgotten to play family savior. Dad texted first, "Water bill came in higher this month. Can you check the account?" Then Mom followed, "Out of the meds you usually pick up. Can you swing by the pharmacy?" And finally, Harry, "Yo, we're out of groceries. You still got that delivery app?" I stared at each one, felt the little vibration in my hand, and let it sit. No replies, no excuses. Silence. By week 2, the tone changed. Mortgage due. Send what you usually do. Don't ignore us. This is serious. Quit being dramatic. Just cover it like always. Like always. The entitlement in those 2 words told me everything. It wasn't even a request. It was a command they thought I'd obey out of habit. I didn't. Then came the guilt trip reinforcements. Out of nowhere, my phone rang with a number I recognized. Aunt Lori. She never called unless something was truly wrong. I answered. "Sweetie," she started, voice dripping with that fake sympathy of older relatives perfect. "Your mom's worried sick. She said you've been distant. Is everything all right?" I leaned back in my chair, smirked. "I'm fine, Aunt Lori. Guess she left out the part where I've been paying their bills for years." A pause. Then the polite dodge. "Families help each other, dear. Your mom said you've been cold lately." I almost laughed. Cold? That's one way to put finally stopped being their doormat. Did she also tell you they wrote me out of the will and left everything to Harry? Dead silence. Then a nervous cough. I don't get involved in those things. But maybe just talk to them? Of course. She didn't want to get in the middle, but she had no problem carrying their water. I hung up before she could keep pushing. It was clear. They'd started their smear campaign. If I wasn't going to bankroll their lives quietly, then they'd paint me as the villain. And where better to start than Facebook? The first post came from Mom. A smiling selfie of her and Dad on the porch, captioned, "We gave everything to our children. Sometimes love just isn't enough." Dozens of likes, comments rolling in. "You two are such amazing parents. Stay strong," not a single name mentioned, but anyone who knew us could fill in the blanks. Then Harry jumped in. Because of course he did. He shared Dad's post with his own caption. "Some people only care when they're getting something. Family is about showing up, not keeping score." I'd give anything to protect Mom and Dad. I swear I nearly spit out my coffee. This was the same guy who hadn't chipped in for rent in years, who sold my watch behind my back, who drained every dollar of help my parents gave him, and now he was online playing the role of dutiful son. And people bought it. You're such a good son. Your brother should be ashamed. Don't let him bring you down. They didn't know the truth, didn't care to. They just wanted a story where Golden Boy Harry was the hero, and I was the cold-hearted villain who abandoned my poor aging parents. I didn't stay quiet. I jumped in and started dropping screenshots, bank transfers, utility payments, receipts for meds, even the $2,100 property tax bill I covered last year. The comments flipped instantly. The sympathy likes dried up, the poor Harry stuff stopped, and the people who'd been cheering them on went silent. A few even deleted their comments. Harry tried throwing shade once more, but the screenshots buried him. You can't argue with numbers, and the receipts spoke louder than anything I could type. I dropped the screenshots and then went dark. And the quieter I got after that, the louder they got. Behind those posts, I knew the truth. They were panicking. The bills were stacking. The mortgage was slipping. And for the first time in years, their safety net wasn't there to catch them. They thought they were punishing me with shame. But all they were doing was proving exactly why I walked away in the first place. And I'll be honest, I was enjoying the show. The house was already sliding toward foreclosure. They'd already been 90 days behind on payments before I cut them off, and the auction date was basically locked in. All my help had just been delaying the inevitable. So when the notice finally dropped, it wasn't a shock, it was just the hammer falling. I'd seen how they operated, cover shortfalls with wishful thinking and assume I'd patch the rest. Only this time, the patchwork wasn't coming. What did surprise me was how fast Harry's disaster started bleeding out into the street. It started on a Tuesday night. I was walking back from the gym, earbuds still in, when a beat-up sedan pulled up to the curb beside me. 3 guys stepped out, scruffy, pissed off, and clearly not here to talk about the weather. "You Harry's brother?" one of them barked. I pulled my earbuds out, narrowed my eyes. "Depends who's asking." "He owes us," another one snapped. "Said you were backing him. Time to pay up." I actually laughed. "Yeah, no. I don't back losers. You've got the wrong guy. Wrong move." The tallest one jabbed a finger into my chest. "Don't play dumb." He said his brother covers him. "That means you. We've been waiting long enough." That's when it clicked. Harry had been taking out loans from whoever was dumb enough to hand him cash, promising he'd pay them back, probably dropping my name as the safety net. Classic Harry, burning bridges with a lighter he borrowed from me. I shook my head. "Listen carefully. Harry's been lying to you. I'm not part of his circus. You want your money? Go find him." "Funny," the guy sneered, "because it looks like you're both running a scam. He says you're the bankroll. You say you don't know. Which one of you is lying?" Before I could answer, another one shoved me hard enough to knock me a step back. My instincts kicked in. I wasn't about to roll over and play victim. I planted my foot, shoved back twice as hard, and the guy stumbled into his buddy. "Try that again," I said, calm but sharp. "See how it ends." That's when the tallest one grabbed my arm. And just like that, it was on. The other 2 lunged. But adrenaline does funny things. I wasn't scared. I was focused. One swung wild. I ducked and landed a clean shot to his ribs. The last guy tried to grab me, and I slammed his hand against the hood until he yelped. "Still think I'm the wrong guy to mess with?" I growled. They backed off, glaring but not leaving. I pulled out my phone, dialed 911 right in front of them. "Yeah, 3 men just tried to assault me outside my place." Still here. Still running their mouths. The one clutching his ribs cursed under his breath. "This ain't over." I smirked. "You're right. It's over for Harry. Because when the cops ask who sent you, guess whose name you'll be giving them?" The cruiser rolled up 5 minutes later. I told the officers what happened, calm and precise. I pulled up Harry's text from last week where he flat out wrote, "Don't worry, my brother always covers me," along with the usual messages from my parents asking for money and their Facebook post painting me as cold. Proof, in black and white, that he'd been dropping my name as his bankroll. The guys tried to spin some story about me and Harry running scams, but with bruises they couldn't explain, and Harry's own words on my phone, the cops weren't buying it. They got warned and told to leave. As the squad car pulled away, one of them leaned out the window and shouted, "We'll find your brother!" I smiled. Good luck. He's allergic to responsibility. When the street finally went quiet, I stood there, breathing steady, phone still in my hand. I figured that was the end of it. Wrong. Later that night, maybe 2 hours after the cops left, someone pounded on my apartment door. Hard. I opened it to find Harry, red-faced, furious. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped, pushing his way inside. "Why'd you call the cops?" "You're making me look bad." "Look bad?" I repeated, laughing. 3 thugs showed up at my door because you can't keep your lies straight, and your takeaway is, I embarrassed you? They weren't thugs, he shot back. They're friends, just helping me out. You made it worse calling the police like some coward. I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. Friends? They tried to jump me over your loans, Harry. That's not friendship. That's stupidity. And you dragged my name into it. He waved a hand, defensive. Relax, man. It's not a big deal. You can handle yourself. They'll back off once I square things up. Square things up with what? I snapped. You're broke. You don't even have rent money, and you're borrowing from randoms on the street. You're not just broke. You're reckless. His jaw tightened, and then he went for his last pathetic card. Maybe I'll tell Mom and Dad you're making it worse. They'll believe me before they believe you. I laughed so hard it stopped him cold. Go ahead. Tell them. The same parents covering your mess while you sink them into foreclosure? Yeah, I'm sure your word means a lot right now. His face twisted. He tried to puff up, like he was going to make himself look intimidating, and squared me. And I don't know if it was the adrenaline still burning from the earlier fight, or just years of pent-up frustration, but I didn't even think. I swung. My fist landed square on his jaw. Harry stumbled back into the wall, clutching his face. You ever drag my name into your scams again? I said, voice low, calm. And you won't just be explaining yourself to Mom and Dad. You'll be explaining yourself to me. I opened the door, grabbed him by the shirt, and shoved him out into the hallway. He shouted something about me being crazy, but I slammed the door before I cared to listen. For the first time in years, I felt clear. No guilt, no hesitation. Harry wasn't just lazy, he was dangerous. And if he thought he could use me as his shield, he was about to learn how fast I could burn that bridge. Because now it wasn't just his mess. His lies were dragging me into the mud, and I was done letting him pull. I didn't have to wait long before the next act in their little circus showed up. 2 days later, I was at work. Just another morning catching up on emails when the receptionist buzzed my office. There are 3 people here asking for you. They say they're your family. A Mr. and Mrs. Rivers, and she paused like she wasn't sure how to phrase it. A man who says he's your brother. I closed my eyes, sighed. Of course. They'd gone from texts to Facebook posts to sending angry lenders to now storming my workplace. Tell them I'm not available, I said. They said it's urgent, she whispered. They'll wait. Fine. Let them wait. I went back to my emails, finished out a meeting, took my time. An hour later, I finally walked down to the lobby. And there they were. Mom clutching her purse like it had answers inside. Dad standing stiff, arms crossed like he was ready to deliver a lecture. Harry leaning against the wall, jaw still faintly bruised from the punch I'd given him, glaring like a child grounded too long. When they saw me, they all straightened. Calm, son, Mom said, already trying to soften me with her voice. We need to talk. I folded my arms. Talk fast. I've got work to do. Dad stepped forward. You'd really let us lose the house over this? After everything we've done for you? I tilted my head. You mean everything I've done for you? He bristled. Don't start with that attitude. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. You owe us something. I laughed. Sharp, loud enough to draw a few stares from nearby co-workers. Fed me? I've been feeding you for the last 10 years. Clothed me? I paid for your furnace, your car insurance, your property taxes. I've wired thousands to keep you out of foreclosure before, and you erased me anyway. I pulled my phone out, scrolled through my banking app, and held it up. See this? Mortgage transfer, 11 grand. Furnace repair, 4 grand. Utilities, meds, groceries, year after year. You want receipts? I've got them all. Mom's lip trembled. We didn't mean to hurt you. You've always been strong. Harry, he just needs more support. Harry scoffed, finally speaking. You make it sound like I'm lazy. I've been working, just not your kind of job. Music isn't easy, you know. Music? I barked a laugh. That's what you call posting clips that don't break 200 views? Harry, you don't have a career. You've got a hobby, and you're drowning everyone around you to fund it. His face turned red. You're just jealous. Of what? Being a parasite? Dad snapped then, pulling out a manila envelope. Enough! You think you're so smart? Sign this. You've got a responsibility to this family, whether you like it or not. I didn't even take it from him. What is it? Just some paperwork, he muttered. Authorization to help with the mortgage. A few signatures. Nothing major. Nothing major? I smirked. You tried this with the pawn shop scam. You think I'm dumb enough to sign something that ties me to Harry's debts? Cute. Mom looked panicked. It's just a formality, sweetheart. If you really care about us, you'll sign. I shook my head. If I sign, I'm legally on the hook for your mess. Not happening. Dad's face twisted with anger. You'd really refuse your own parents? After we gave you everything? I leaned in close, lowered my voice so only they could hear. You didn't give me everything. I gave you everything. And now you're standing in my workplace trying to trick me into signing away my future. That's not parenting. That's manipulation. Harry muttered under his breath. You're making this worse than it is? I turned to him. Worse? Harry, your loan sharks already showed up at my door. You're lucky I didn't let them in. You've dragged my name through your scams, and now you're here trying to drag me into them legally. This isn't worse. It's reality. By now, a few co-workers had gathered in the lobby, pretending not to eavesdrop. I didn't care. Let them hear. Let them see who my family really was. Dad straightened, trying to save face. You'll regret this. I smiled. I already regret helping you this long. Silence hung heavy. Mom's eyes filled. Harry glared. Dad seethed. But none of them spoke. Because for the first time, they realized their tricks weren't working. The guilt, the threats, the fake paperwork. It was all bouncing off. I stepped back toward the elevators. Don't come here again. Don't call my job. You want to lose the house? Fine. You chose Harry. Now let him save you. The doors slid open behind me. I stepped inside, hit the button, and left them standing there in the lobby, exposed and powerless. And in that moment, I knew. They were finally starting to see it. I wasn't their steady backup anymore. I was the wall they kept slamming into. The foreclosure notice had finally dropped like a hammer. They'd sold what they could: tools, jewelry, even furniture I'd bought for them over the years, but it barely touched the debt. The house was circling the drain, and so were they. So it wasn't a surprise when they showed up again. This time, not at work, not at a neutral spot, at my apartment. My door buzzer lit up just after 9 p.m. I checked the monitor. There they were. Mom and Dad looking hollowed out, Harry standing behind them with his arms crossed, face full of fake confidence. I should have ignored it, but some part of me wanted to see how much lower they'd sink. So I buzzed them in. The three of them stood in my living room like they owned it. Mom clasped her purse like it was a life raft. Dad carried a manila folder under his arm, like paperwork was going to fix decades of failure. Harry leaned against my wall, smug, bruised jaw still faint from where I'd clocked him. Jacob, Mom started, her voice trembling. Please, we're out of time. We need you. I leaned against the counter. Need me? That's all you've ever needed. Never cared about what I wanted, just what I could do. So go on. Let's hear it. Dad slapped the folder on my table. Final notice. The bank won't budge. If you don't step in, we lose the house. I tilted my head. Correction. You lose the house. You left it to Harry. His mess. His consequence. Mom's lip quivered. It's still your family home. Don't you care? I cared enough to pay the taxes, to pay for repairs, to keep the lights on for years. But you left me out. You chose him. That home hasn't been mine for a long time. Harry pushed off the wall. God, you're such a martyr. It's not that complicated. Just cover it like before. You act like you're broke too. That smug tone. It snapped something inside me. You think this is normal, Harry? Running up debts with strangers, dragging my name into your scams, and then strolling in here like it's my duty to bail you out? You're pathetic, he sneered. At least I don't act like I'm better than everyone else. Better? Number? Smarter? Definitely. Dad's face turned red. Enough! His voice cracked through the room. His hands shook as he pointed at me. You act like we owe you something, but you've got no idea. We only adopted you so Harry wouldn't be alone. You were supposed to help him. That was your purpose. It felt like the air was sucked out of the room. Adopted. The word echoed in my head, heavy and brutal. For a moment, I thought I misheard. My chest tightened. My ears rang. Adopted? My voice was barely more than a whisper. What the hell are you talking about? Mom's face went pale. She reached out a hand. We were going to tell you. When? I barked. When I was 5, 10, 20, or never. Because last I checked, almost 3 decades of my life just went up in smoke in one sentence. Dad doubled down. Don't twist this. We gave you a home, food, a family. Without us, you'd have had nothing. My laugh was sharp, hollow. A family? You lied to me my entire life, used me like a tool, and you stand here acting like you did me a favor? Harry's smirk spread across his face. Be grateful we even took you in. Plenty of kids don't get that chance, I snapped. Fury surged through me. I stepped forward until I was inches from him. You smug little leech! I built that house. I fed this family. I kept all of you afloat. And you're telling me my entire existence was just to bankroll you? He shrugged. Pretty much. That was it. My hands shook, not from fear, but from sheer rage. You didn't adopt me. You recruited me, and I quit. The room went silent. Mom gasped. Dad froze. Harry's smirk faltered for the first time. You can't mean that, Mom whispered, eyes wet. Oh, I mean it. You erased me from the will. You bled me dry. And now you admit the only reason I was ever here was to babysit Harry? To fund his failures? I'm done. Dad's face hardened. You're still our son. No, I'm not. Not after this. I opened the door, pointed out. Get out of my apartment. You wanted me for a purpose. That purpose is dead. They hesitated, like maybe I'd break. I didn't. I stood stone still until they shuffled past me. Harry muttered under his breath, but I slammed the door before I heard it. I sat down, staring at the wall. My mind reeled. 27 years of my life, and they never told me the truth. Not once. Not even a hint. I wasn't family. I was a damn investment. The next day my phone buzzed. Aunt Lori. She never called me unless something was serious. Her voice was shaky. Jacob, Your parents told me what happened last night. They said you found out. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, found out that my entire life's been a lie, that I was adopted, and apparently the only reason I was even here was to keep Harry company and bail him out. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "We were going to tell you." Eventually, the words hit harder than anything my parents had said. We. Not just them, everyone, the whole family. So you knew? My voice cracked with rage. All of you knew, and you let me play the fool? Let me break my back for them, pay their bills, save their house, all while you sat there smiling at family dinners pretending everything was normal? Jacob, she said softly, it wasn't my place. I almost dropped the phone, my hands shaking. Not your place? It was my life, and every single one of you decided I didn't deserve the truth. She tried again, voice wobbling. We thought your parents would tell you when the time was right. The time was right, I snapped. I'm 27 years old. I've been their crutch for a decade, and you're telling me the time wasn't right? Number. The time was never going to come, because they didn't want me to know. They needed me blind and useful. Silence stretched. Then I said it, cold and final. So you can tell them this. Consider me retired from my purpose. I hung up before she could answer. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. No urge to call back. No itch to explain myself. Just silence. And it was the best silence I'd ever heard. The house didn't last long after that. Within weeks, the foreclosure was official. A bright orange notice slapped across the door like a scarlet letter. Neighbors whispered, family gossiped online, but I didn't say a word. Let them watch. Let them see how fast the golden child and his worshippers crumbled without their steady son to carry the weight. Harry didn't take it well. He posted rants about corrupt banks and family betrayal, but the truth bled through. His little music buddies stopped showing up. The guys he owed money to circled like vultures. He went from smug to desperate in record time. The best part? When the house went up for auction, I bought it. Not under my name. Under an LLC I'd spun up a few months earlier, right after I saw the first default notice and knew where this was heading. Clean, legal, airtight. The same house they erased me from, left me out of, willed entirely to Harry? I owned it now. The day the deed was finalized, I drove by. The porch swing was gone, the shutters peeling, the grass dead. Harry was out front, shoving a duffel bag into a rusted car, Mom crying on the curb, Dad pacing with his hands on his hips. They looked up when they saw me. Mom stood, eyes wide. Jacob, please, you can't let them take our home. I rolled down the window, held up the paperwork, and smiled. Too late. It's mine. Their faces dropped like I'd shot them. Dad stormed over, fists clenched. You vulture! You'd steal the house from your own family? No, I said calmly. You stole it from me the second you wrote me out. I just took it back. Mom's lip trembled. We did it out of love. You were always so steady, we thought Harry needed more. Love! I barked a laugh. Don't dress it up. You didn't love me. You used me. And now that the ATM's closed, suddenly you're rewriting history again. Harry slammed the car door. You're heartless. After everything, you'd really stand there and watch us lose everything? I stepped out of the car, squared up, and looked him dead in the eye. No, Harry. I didn't watch you lose everything. I made sure of it. Because I'm not heartless. I'm free. He flinched, the last ounce of bravado leaking out of him. For the first time, Harry had nothing to say. Mom reached for my arm, but I pulled back. Jacob, please. You don't understand? No. I cut her off. I understand perfectly. You never saw me as a son. I was a tool, a plan, a backup. And now, I'm none of those things. Dad tried one last swing, voice rising. You'll regret this. We're still your parents. You can't erase blood. I leaned in close enough for him to see I meant every word. Funny thing, turns out there was never any blood. He froze. Mom covered her mouth. Harry stared at the ground. I got back in my car, started the engine, and rolled the window down one last time. Enjoy the ride, Harry. You always wanted the house. It's yours in spirit. But on paper, it belongs to the brother you tried to erase. Then I drove off, leaving them standing in the ruins of their little empire. In the weeks that followed, the calls came in waves. First begging, then blaming, then bargaining. We only adopted you out of love. We didn't mean to hurt you. You're still our son. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. I rented the house out 2 months later. The new tenants paid on time, respected the place, even fixed the porch swing I once repaired with my own hands. Funny how strangers treated the house better than the people who swore it was their legacy.
Harry moved into a friend's garage, then bounced between couches. Dad tried to bluff his way into part-time jobs, but couldn't keep them. Mom floated between pity posts online and blaming me in whispers. It didn't matter. Their opinions were worth less than the foreclosure notice they ignored. Me? I slept better, ate better, worked better. For the first time in years, I wasn't living on standby for someone else's crisis. Because the truth was simple. I was never their backup plan. They were my burden, and I was finally done carrying it. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. At 16, my mom sent me to a behavioral rehab because my brother faked a bruise and called me violent. 2 years later, his lies fell apart. He was caught stealing. My dad finally confessed he knew the truth, and my mom's breakdown made headlines. Hey Reddit, my family spent years calling me the problem. They lied, twisted everything, and finally sent me away to fix me. I kept quiet, built my own life, and thought I was free, until their whole act started falling apart. But first, here's how it really started. I'm Isaac, 16. I live in a house that looks perfect if you drive by too quick. My mom, Clara, calls it her safe space. The lawn's always cut straight, curtains always match, even the mailbox gets wiped down. Inside, though, everything feels like it could explode over the smallest thing. Dad, Tom, travels most weeks. When he's home, he camps out in his office pretending to work. He's good at nodding without listening. Mom says he's the steady one, but that's only because he never takes a side. Then there's my brother, Ryan. 13, baby face, fake innocence, full-time tattletale. He figured out early that acting scared of me gets him out of trouble. I could breathe too loud and he'd say I was mad again. A mom would scold me before even asking what happened. Every morning, Mom starts with her checklist voice. Shoes by the door, dishes away, no crumbs on the counter. She's not mean at first, just exact. But the tone changes fast if you don't follow the script. She keeps a whiteboard in the kitchen with house standards. That's what she calls rules. Each one has a check mark next to it if you did good that day. She says it teaches accountability. I say nothing, because talking back just adds a red X beside my name. We go to church every Sunday. Ryan plays the angel. People love him there. Mom beams when someone says, "You've raised such polite boys." She doesn't look at me when they say it. School's no break. Teachers label me as having an attitude problem. Apparently asking why a rule exists means you're disrespectful. So I keep quiet. I get decent grades, not great ones, because I'm tired of hearing Mom say, "You could do better if you focused like your brother." Mrs. Heller, our next-door neighbor, doesn't help. She's the kind who waters her plants just to spy. She tells Mom she's concerned about me, says I look angry when I walk home from school. Mom eats that up. After one of those talks, I came home to find my door open and my stuff rearranged. She said she was checking for cigarettes. I don't even smoke. That night, I started locking my phone in a shoebox under my bed. She'd already gone through it once, saying she was making sure you're not getting into the wrong influences. The house runs on surveillance, cameras in the living room for insurance, door codes that Mom changes monthly. She calls it responsible parenting. I call it paranoia. I keep my sanity by fixing my old bike. There's something about tightening bolts and hearing the click of gears that makes sense. Machines don't lie about what's wrong with them. Ryan likes to watch me from the porch. He'll smile like we're good brothers, then say something like, "Mom said you're not supposed to use the tools without asking." Then he'll run inside before I can answer. 10 minutes later, Mom's at the door saying, "What did I tell you about respecting house property?" When Dad left for another trip later that week, Ryan started bragging about his new privileges. Mom gave him access to the home tablet and told him he could help track chores. Basically, he got promoted to spy. I tried to talk to Mom about it once. I said, "I feel like you believe him no matter what he says." She said, "Then maybe stop giving him reasons to worry." That was the whole conversation. By Friday, the air in the house felt heavy. Even the lights seemed too bright. Ryan was testing me, breaking little things. A picture frame, a phone charger, then whispering, "Mom's gonna blame you." He wasn't wrong. That night, after everyone went to bed, I walked into the hallway for water. I heard my parents' door cracked open. Mom's voice was sharp, low. "He's going to ruin everything we've built." Dad's reply came muffled. "He's just a kid." "No," she said. "He's a problem." I stood there, still, until the floor creaked. The voices stopped. I went back to my room and lay there, staring at the ceiling fan. It buzzed faintly, off balance. I thought about how even something perfectly installed can shake itself loose if it spins too long. That's what the house felt like. Everything spinning.
pretending it was under control. The week started off tense. Nobody said it out loud, but the house felt like it was waiting for someone to mess up. Mom was pacing more than usual, her lips tight, her eyes darting around like she was looking for something out of place. Dad stayed late at work every night, claiming extra meetings. Ryan was grinning too much, that fake calm before he pulled something. Wednesday afternoon, Mom was in her office finishing a presentation for her job. Ryan was hovering behind her, pretending to help. 10 minutes later, I heard her scream. The kind of scream that makes your stomach drop. I ran in and saw her clutching her laptop, eyes wild. "It's gone! The file's gone!" she shouted. Ryan stepped back, hands up. "Isaac used the computer earlier," he said quickly. That wasn't true. I hadn't touched it, but she spun toward me before I could speak. "You did this, didn't you? You can't stand to see anyone else succeed." I said, "I didn't even open your laptop." She pointed at me like she was addressing a criminal. "You think this is funny? I have a deadline." Dad walked in halfway through and just sighed. "Can we not?" he said. Mom ignored him and yelled, "You're sabotaging me." I stood there, hands open. "Check the history," I said. "You'll see I wasn't even logged in." She didn't check anything. She just slammed the laptop shut and stormed off. Later, I heard her tell Dad autosave brought it back. The trash showed it was renamed and deleted while Ryan was helping. Dinner that night was a minefield. Ryan kept poking at me under the table, whispering, "Maybe don't touch Mom's stuff next time." I told him to stop. Mom looked up from her plate. "Don't start." I wasn't starting. I barely said anything. She nitpicked everything I did. How I chewed, how I breathed, how I looked checked out. Dad stared at his food like he wanted to disappear. When Mom's phone buzzed, she read something, frowned, and muttered, "Unbelievable." She put the phone down hard. "Your teacher emailed me," she said. "Apparently, you're being disrespectful again. Non-cooperative. Is this true?" I said, "I didn't say anything disrespectful. I just asked." She cut me off. "You just can't stop talking back, can you?" Dad rubbed his forehead. "Isaac, you gotta stop making everything harder than it is. Just do what you're told." I said, "I'm not doing anything wrong." He snapped, "Then get serious or get out." I felt the air leave my chest. Ryan leaned back in his chair like he was watching a show. Mom said, "That's enough. Go to your room. I'm done." I stood up but stayed there, trying to find the right words. I said, "You don't even listen anymore." She said, "Because I'm tired of the lies." Ryan had his phone half hidden, recording. I saw the reflection in the glass cabinet. He wanted proof of me losing it. I took one step closer to the counter and slammed my hand on it. The sound echoed. "Nobody listens," I said. My voice cracked halfway through. I wasn't yelling threats. I was just tired. Ryan jumped up, bolted for the stairs, and yelled, "He hit me!" Mom gasped and ran after him. I followed a few seconds later. She was in his room, holding him while he pretended to cry. His gaming monitor was on the floor, cracked through the middle. He had one hand on his shoulder, red like he'd rubbed it hard. "He grabbed me and threw it," Ryan said, between fake sobs. Mom looked back at me like I'd pulled a knife. "You did this?" she asked. I said, "No, I didn't touch him." She didn't blink. "You stay right there," she said, voice low and sharp. "Don't move." Dad came running up, looked at the monitor, then at me. "What the hell happened?" I said, "Ask him. He broke it earlier." Ryan said, "He's lying." He freaked out. Mom didn't ask for more details. She pulled out her phone and said she was calling the police for safety. I said, "Are you serious?" When the officers showed up, everything slowed down. They asked questions, looked around, saw no real injuries. Ryan kept sniffling in his mother's arms. I stood by the wall, numb. One of the cops asked if I wanted to go somewhere else for the night. I said no. He nodded, told Mom there wasn't much they could do. When they left, the silence was worse than the shouting. Mom said, "You need help. This can't go on." I said, "I didn't hurt him." She said, "That's exactly what someone in denial says." Dad started packing a small bag with my clothes. I asked where I was going. He said, "Just do what your mother says. It's for the best." I didn't argue anymore. The next morning, Mom was already dressed, car keys in hand. She said, "We're taking you to a program. A good one. They help families like ours." She made it sound like a vacation. Dad carried the bag. Ryan sat at the bottom of the stairs with cereal and that same small smirk he always got when things went his way. I walked out without looking at him. In the car, Mom talked about healing and starting over. Her voice was calm, almost cheerful, like she'd solved a big problem. I looked out the window. The houses slid past. Perfect lawns, clean driveways, families who probably thought we were normal. I didn't say a word the whole ride. I kept thinking, this isn't help. It's cleanup. They weren't saving me. They were getting rid of me. The place they took me to was called Ridgeway Youth Recovery Center. The sign out front had a tree logo and the slogan, Rebuilding Futures. It looked like a school from the outside. Brick walls, trimmed grass, big windows. But when the doors closed behind me, it sounded like a lock clicking. A staff member with a plastic smile took my bag. "Welcome to Ridgeway," she said. Her name tag said Angela, but she said it like she was reading a line from a brochure. I had to empty my pockets, hand over my phone, belt, shoelaces, even my earbuds. They gave me a clear plastic bag with a toothbrush, 2 shirts with Ridgeway printed on the back, and plain gray sweats. Everything had a number tag. Mine was 47B. Then came the metal detector and a checklist about contraband. The staff acted polite but had that fake tone people use when they already know you don't belong. Intake took about an hour. Forms, signatures, a bored nurse reading the script. They moved me through like a fast track they'd run 100 times. The halls smelled like bleach and cafeteria food. My room had 2 metal bunks, a small window too high to reach, and a cracked dresser. My bunkmates came in later. Marcus, 17, tall, sarcastic smile, and Luis, 15, quiet, small build, dark circles under his eyes. Marcus tossed his bag on the bed and said, "You the new kid? Welcome to Ridgeway High School for the morally confused." I asked how long he'd been here. He grinned. Too long to still care. Luis barely looked up. He was writing something in a notebook. Every night, I'd later learn, he wrote letters to his little sister. He said she was the only one who still believed he'd come home soon. The first night was lights out at 9. A guard did rounds every hour, flashlight beam sweeping the walls. You weren't allowed to close the door all the way. Morning started with a bell at 6. Breakfast was powdered eggs, toast, and milk that tasted like plastic. Then group therapy. Group therapy was in a circle of plastic chairs under a poster that said, "Own your harm, find your peace." The counselor, Ms. Denning, talked like a podcast host. "Accountability is healing," she said. Each kid had to explain what they did wrong. When it was my turn, I said, "I didn't hurt anyone." My brother lied. She smiled too wide. "Denial is common at this stage. You'll get there." I said, "There's nothing to get to." She wrote something on her clipboard. "Resistance. Needs structured empathy." After that, I stopped sharing. Marcus warned me later. If you don't say sorry, they keep you longer. He'd learned to fake it. "You just tell them you understand your triggers and cry a little," he said. "Then they call you cured." Luis whispered, "It doesn't matter. They already wrote our stories." Days blurred. Breakfast, chores, therapy, worksheets about anger cycles, lights out. Same thing every day. Talking got you nowhere. I started working out in the mornings, push-ups, sit-ups, laps in the hallway. It helped me stay quiet. We weren't supposed to write anything that wasn't program approved, but I kept a small notebook under my mattress. I wrote short lines, not diary stuff, just facts. Day 9. Counselor says lying is a defense mechanism. I said silence is too. Day 14. Marcus laughed at breakfast for the first time. Day 20. Luis said he dreams of home every night. I don't. 2 months in, Mom visited. The staff arranged the room to look cozy. Plants, cookies, fake warmth. She hugged me like someone posing for a photo. "You look calmer," she said. I said, "I was calm before." She smiled tight. "See? That's the attitude we're fixing." She talked to the counselor afterward, praising Ridgeway for turning him around. I heard her laugh down the hallway. I didn't feel angry, just empty. After that, I didn't see her again. Marcus kept things bearable. He'd joke about the group leaders, call them the emotion police. But at night, when lights went off, he talked quieter. "You know why you're here?" he said once. "Not because of what you did, because they needed to believe they handled it. It's easier to say, 'My son's getting help,' than 'We screwed him over.'" Luis nodded from the other bunk. Better a rehab kid than a broken family. I didn't answer. I just wrote it down later. After 6 months, they said I was ready for release. I hadn't admitted harm, but I'd been quiet, followed rules, and didn't fight. That was enough. They told me I'd made significant progress. At Ridgeway, checked boxes beat confessions. Compliance looked like healing on paper. The night before I left, Marcus walked with me to the gate after lights out. The sky outside the barred window looked huge, empty. He said, "When you get out, don't expect a new family waiting. Expect the same one, just quieter." I said, "I know." And in the morning, they gave me my phone back. Dead battery, no messages. A staff member handed me a packet labeled Home Transition Plan. It said things like, be honest about your progress and practice patience with family reintegration. Dad was waiting in the car outside. He didn't get out, just nodded when I opened the door. The drive home was silent except for the GPS voice. Dad cleared his throat once, said, "Your mom's been worried sick." I looked out the window. I thought about what Marcus said, how people prefer a neat story to the messy truth. I wondered how you talk to people who've already decided who you are. When we pulled into the driveway, Mom's flowers were still lined up perfect, bright against the clean bricks. It looked like nothing had changed. And somehow, that felt worse than if everything had. The first thing I noticed when I walked back into the house was the smell. Same candles, same floor polish, same fake sense of calm. Mom, Clara, was in the kitchen wearing her everything's fine smile. A tray of cookies sat on the counter, just like when guests come over. She said, "Welcome home," like she was greeting a neighbor. Ryan came down the stairs, grinning wide. "Hey, big bro," he said. He looked older somehow, confident. His hair was styled, his clothes new. There was a new gaming setup in the living room, too. Big monitor, LED lights, brand new chair. Dad stood in the corner with his phone half in his hand. He gave me a quick pat on the shoulder. "We all make mistakes," he said, like he was reading a quote from somewhere. My old room was gone. They'd turned it into a guest room. Fresh paint, decorative pillows, no trace of me. My stuff was packed into boxes in the garage, labeled Isaac's Old Things. That night, we had dinner like it was a holiday. Mom asked surface questions. "Do they feed you well there? Did you learn anything helpful?" I said yes, just to keep it short. Ryan kept looking at me between bites, like he was waiting for me to slip. The next morning, I found a note taped to the fridge. House guidelines for reintegration. It had bullet points like respect space, communicate calmly, demonstrate trustworthiness. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was Mom's. School wasn't any better. The first day back, people stared like I was a new exhibit. Whispers followed me from the lockers to class. Someone said, "That's the kid who hit his brother." I heard it enough times that I stopped pretending I didn't. One teacher, Mr. Collins, pulled me aside after class. "I hope you're doing better now," he said, slow and careful, like talking to a recovering addict. I said, "Yeah, that was it." By the end of the week, I heard Ryan was telling people he'd forgiven me. A classmate said, "That's really mature of your brother." I laughed once, hard, then stopped. At home, Mom treated me like a guest on probation. She'd say things like, "It's nice to see you trying," or "I hope this calm version of you lasts." If I forgot to close a cabinet or left a light on, she'd pause, breathe through her nose and say, "Let's not slip back into old habits." Dad avoided any real talk. He'd just say, "We're proud of you," without looking up from his phone. Ryan liked to test me. He'd borrow my headphones and forget to return them. Once I caught him in the garage digging through my boxes. "Just looking for my old stuff," he said. He smirked and left a comic book half torn on the floor. I didn't react. I knew he wanted me to. After 2 weeks, I found a part-time job at a local auto shop. The owner, Rick, was in his 40s, bald, heavy hands, no small talk. He said, "You work, you get paid. Don't screw around." That was fine with me. The place smelled like oil and metal, and the noise of tools was constant but comforting. Machines didn't ask questions. Rick taught me how to change brakes, how to read engine sounds. He didn't care about my story. One day, when I asked if he needed my ID for the paperwork, he said, "Just show up on time." That's ID enough. For the first time in months, I felt normal. I liked how Grease stayed honest. It didn't hide what it was. Back home, nothing had changed. Mom still avoided eye contact. Ryan kept finding new ways to poke. He'd step into my room, well, the guest room, and say, "You don't mind if I use your old charger, right?" I'd say, "Yeah, I mind," and he'd grin. Dinner conversations were short. Mom asked about work. Dad commented about the weather. Ryan bragged about grades, friends, everything. He was the perfect kid again. One night, I got home late after a shift. They were in the living room, watching TV. Ryan muted it and said, "Working hard? That place must be teaching you discipline." Mom smiled faintly. "See? Positive structure works." I went upstairs without answering. The next day, I came home early and heard Ryan talking on his phone in his room. His voice carried down the hall. "He's calm now because they fixed him," he said, laughing. "Yeah, it worked. He barely talks. He's like a robot now." I stood by the door until I heard him say, "Mom said she's proud of how I handled everything. Guess I'm the reason things are better." His friend laughed. Ryan said, "Yeah, I know. I'm basically the reason our family's okay." I walked out the front door before I could say anything. The air outside was cold enough to sting.
I sat on the curb across the street. The neighborhood was quiet. Sprinklers running, porch lights glowing, perfect little lives. I thought about how Mom said they'd fixed me. What they really meant was I'd stopped fighting back. Silence was what they wanted, and I'd finally given it to them. A car passed, headlights sweeping across my face. I didn't move. I stayed until the street went dark again. The next morning, I opened a teen account at the credit union near the shop with my state ID. I deposited my first paycheck. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know what I was saving for exactly. Maybe a car, maybe a room far away, but it felt good knowing I had something that was mine again. Something nobody could take or twist into their story. I kept the receipts folded in my wallet. Each one felt like a small piece of freedom. Ryan had gotten cocky since I came back. At first, it was small things. Taking my stuff, lying about it, laughing when I caught him. Then it turned into something else. I started noticing money missing from Mom's purse. Small things disappearing from drawers. When Mom noticed, she didn't even ask him. She asked me. "I know you've been trying," she said one night, voice calm but sharp around the edges. "But old habits don't vanish overnight." I said, "You think I stole $20? She sighed. "I didn't say that." Ryan walked by, eating chips, pretending not to listen. I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. The next morning, she found her watch gone. She accused me again. That evening, Ryan posted a story online saying, "When toxic people play the victim, it's just sad." He tagged a quote about recovery not being real for everyone. A few kids from school reshared it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. People believe what they want. He liked that silence. He'd hover by me at breakfast and say, "You gonna yell this time? Or are you gonna do that quiet, angry thing?" I didn't answer. I just grabbed my bag and left for the shop. At work, Rick kept me busy. Grease, tools, customers who complained about noises their cars didn't make. It was simple and honest. Rick didn't talk much, but when he did, it stuck. "Family can make you crazy," he said one afternoon while tightening a bolt. "They build a picture in their heads, and then they get mad when you don't fit in it." I said, "They think they fixed me." Rick snorted. "People like control. You stopped giving them the reaction they wanted. That's what's really driving them nuts." At home, things were unraveling. Ryan's lies were catching up. One of his teachers called Mom because he was caught plagiarizing an essay. She told them he was under stress from family issues. When I walked in that night, she was crying in the kitchen. Ryan had disappeared with her debit card for a few hours. When he came back, he said he needed space and slammed his door. She turned to me like it was my fault. "Can't you try to be supportive? He's still healing from what happened with you." I said, "He's not healing. He's manipulating you." Her eyes went cold. "Don't project your issues onto him." I stopped trying to explain. Silence was easier. It bothered her more anyway. 2 days later, everything blew up. I was under a car at the shop when I heard shouting out front. Rick called my name. "You better come out here." Mom was standing by the counter, red-faced, gripping her purse like she might swing it. "You need to stop enabling my son," she said to Rick. "He's supposed to be in recovery, not hiding in garages." Rick wiped his hands, calm as ever. "He's working, ma'am. Harder than most adults I know." She pointed at me. "You don't understand. He has violent tendencies. He needs supervision. He's manipulating you." Rick stepped closer, voice low but solid. "Lady, the only one yelling here is you. My shop's for work, not whatever this is." She glared, shaking. "You'll regret protecting him." Rick nodded toward the door. "Then you can take that energy somewhere else." Out she froze for a second, like she couldn't believe someone talked back to her, then turned and stormed off. I didn't say a word. That night she was waiting when I got home. The lights were off except for the one over the dining table. She stood there with her arms crossed. "How dare you humiliate me like that?" she said. "Marching in there, yelling at my boss was your idea?" "I didn't do anything," I said. "You made me look insane in front of a stranger." I said, "You didn't need my help for that." Her voice broke into a shout. "You think you're better than this family now? You think you can just walk around pretending you're fixed while the rest of us suffer?" Ryan came downstairs, pretending to mediate. "Mom, calm down. He's doing that thing again. You're scaring her, Isaac." I turned to him. "You started this." Mom stepped between us. "Don't you raise your voice." I didn't. "See?" Ryan said. "He's doing it again." Something in her snapped. She slapped me. The sound hit harder than the sting. She froze, hand trembling. Ryan smirked behind her. I straightened up. My voice was flat. "You need help more than I ever did." Dad appeared from the hallway, half awake, half useless. He looked between us, said nothing, and walked into the kitchen. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. I went upstairs and packed my bag. Just clothes, my wallet, a few tools from the shop. I wrote a note on the back of an envelope. I'm not angry, just done. When I came back down, she was sitting at the table crying without sound. Ryan leaned on the wall, arms crossed, still playing the innocent. I didn't say anything. I walked out the door. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. The streetlights buzzed. As I passed the next house, Mrs. Heller was on her porch watering her plants even though it was dark. She saw me with the bag and said, "Good riddance." I stopped for a second, looked at her. "Yeah," I said, half smiling. "You'll see." Then I kept walking. Well, the room above Rick's garage wasn't much, but it was mine. It smelled like oil and metal, and the floor creaked when the wind shifted. I finished my GED through night classes at the community center. Nobody at home asked about school anyway. Rick cleared it with the landlord. As long as the rent showed up and the fire extinguisher tags were current, nobody asked my age. I worked long hours at the shop. Rick paid me cash at first, then started putting me on the books. He gave me a key to the garage and said, "Lock up when you're done. Don't burn the place down." That was his version of trust. Nights were quiet. I'd sit by the window with my laptop, typing. At first, it was just notes. Memories from Ridgeway, the fake smiles, the scripted therapy lines. Then I started posting them online under an anonymous account called The Ones They Fixed. The first post read, "I was sent away for something I didn't do." They said it was recovery. It was punishment. People started commenting. Some said they'd been there too. One person mentioned the same counselor. Another shared photos of the dorms. Within a week, I got dozens of messages. Kids, parents, even a journalist asking for details. I didn't give my name or location. I just kept posting. Someone eventually dropped a link to an article from 2 years back. Ridgeway Youth Recovery under investigation for unethical practices. It mentioned the same counselors, the same methods. It said the place was run by a company that rebranded every few years under new names. Rick found me one evening still typing when he came up to check the heater. "You doing homework or starting a war?" he asked. "Just writing." He nodded, looked around. "Good. Just make sure you build something out of it. Don't let it eat you." A few weeks later, one of my posts got reposted on a big forum. The comments exploded. Other families started recognizing the name Ridgeway. The local news picked it up. Small story, but enough to stir things up. They called it Rehab or Rebrand, the hidden industry of behavioral programs. I didn't say a word publicly. I didn't have to. The story spoke for itself. Then my phone rang one afternoon. Mom. The moment I answered, her voice was shaking. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're ruining this family," I said. "You mean telling the truth? You're making us look insane. Your brother is suffering because of this. You're dragging his name through the mud." I said, "He dragged mine first." She started to cry, then switched to anger. "You've always wanted attention? Now you've got it." I hung up. Time passed faster after that. I turned 18, got my license, and Rick handed me the keys to an old pickup. "It's yours if you can fix it," he said. Took me 2 weeks to get it running. It wasn't pretty, but it started every time. That was more than I could say for most things in my life. Work stayed steady. The account kept growing. I never posted names, but people connected dots on their own. Some nights I'd check the comments and see strangers defending kids like me. That felt new. Then the phone calls started. First from Mom again, this time shorter. "Your brother's been suspended." She said it like it was my fault. "He was caught stealing money from classmates. He says it's because you filled his head with resentment." I said, "He's just getting caught for what he's always done." She said, "Don't you dare talk about him that way. He's still your brother." "I know," I said. "That's the problem." A week later, Dad called. His voice was quiet, tired. "We need to talk," he said. I met him halfway, outside a diner parking lot. He didn't get out of the car, just rolled the window down halfway. "I saw Ryan break that monitor," he said. "The night everything went down." He was scared, and I didn't say anything. I thought it'd keep the peace. I leaned on the window frame. "You let them send me away to keep the peace." He looked down at the steering wheel. "I'm sorry." I pulled out my phone, started recording. "Say it again." He hesitated. "Isaac, say it." "I'm sorry." I stopped recording. "I don't need your guilt," I said, and walked away. I never posted it. The next month, Ryan got caught shoplifting from a convenience store. Security footage, police, everything. Mom showed up at the station screaming that he was a good boy, and it was all a misunderstanding. It made the local paper. Small piece, back section. Rick handed it to me at work, smirking. Guess karma's got better timing than most people. I didn't smile, but I felt something close. Later that night, I sat on the truck bed outside the garage. The air smelled like oil and rain. I opened my phone, scrolled through the news comments, and saw people talking about Ridgeway again, this time linking it to families like mine. Somewhere between the noise and the silence, I realized I didn't feel angry anymore, just done. The truth was finally louder than their version. For the first time, that felt like enough. It had been months since I'd heard from any of them. The last thing Mom said was that I'd destroyed the family. After that, silence. I kept working, fixing cars, saving money, and not thinking about them. Then one night, near closing time, I heard knocking on the garage door. I opened it and saw Ryan. He looked wrecked. Same hoodie he used to brag about, now torn and dirty. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom kicked me out," he said, voice flat. I leaned against the counter. "Why?" "She lost it. Said I embarrassed her. Said I turned out just like you." He gave a dry laugh that turned into a cough. Guess she finally ran out of people to blame. I handed him a bottle of water and a towel. He sat on a stool, shaking. After a minute, he said, "I lied, Isaac. That night. I made it all up. I didn't say anything. I wanted her to look at me. That's all. The bruise wasn't even from you. I fell off my bike earlier that week. I knew she'd believe it." He rubbed his hands over his face. "I didn't think they'd actually send you away." "You did," I said quietly. He started crying, full breakdown. "I didn't know how to stop it. Every time she talked about you, she looked at me like I saved her. I liked it. I just kept going. I didn't feel anger, just distance." I handed him another bottle of water. "Tell her, not me." He looked up, confused. "She won't listen. That's your problem now." He left a few minutes later, wiping his face. I watched him walk down the street, shoulders hunched, like the air itself was too heavy. I went back inside, locked the door, and kept working. The wrench in my hand felt solid, familiar, real. A few weeks passed, then a letter came in the mail, addressed in Dad's handwriting. I opened it halfway, then stopped. I skimmed the first paragraph and didn't bother finishing. It said, "Clara's having a breakdown. Ryan's in therapy. I'm leaving town. I'm sorry for what we did to you." I folded it once, dropped it in a drawer, and never opened it again. 2 years later, I was 20 and running my own corner of the shop. Rick had semi-retired and let me handle most of the day-to-day work. He put me on the books and let me invoice my bays under my own DBA, Isaac Reed Auto Repair. Business was steady. I had a small apartment over a bakery across town, plain but quiet. I worked 6 days a week, fixed what was broken, and didn't look back. Rick stopped by sometimes. He'd drop a coffee on the counter and say, "You're doing fine, kid." That was his version of proud. I'd hear about my family in pieces. A customer mentioned a woman named Clara who'd started showing up at church ranting about betrayal. Another said Ryan was living with relatives upstate, in and out of therapy, trying to find himself. Apparently, Mom had tried to sue the school district for ruining Ryan's reputation after his shoplifting arrest. It went nowhere. She'd burned too many bridges. Mrs. Heller brings her Corolla in sometimes. She told Rick once, "That poor woman finally lost her mind." I didn't laugh. It just felt like the story closing itself without me in it. One morning, I walked into the shop early. Sunlight hit the metal racks, making the wrenches gleam. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. The message read, "I told her everything. I'm sorry." I didn't need to ask who it was. Ryan. I stared at the screen for a while. I typed a few words, deleted them, then set the phone down. I didn't feel angry or satisfied, just quiet. Outside, the morning was cool. The street was empty except for the sound of a delivery truck down the block. I stepped out to the parking lot, leaned on the hood of an old pickup I'd been working on. I pulled the wrench from my back pocket, the same one Rick gave me years ago when I first started. The metal was worn smooth from use. It caught the sunlight and threw a sharp line across the ground. For a second, I thought about how everything I'd fixed over the years had one thing in common. Nothing ever went back exactly the way it was before. You could repair it, make it work again, but the break was still there, even if no one could see it. I looked back at the shop, the open bay door, the noise of a new day starting. Some things don't get fixed. You just learn to live without their noise. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.